Cream cheese
Ooh,
Oh,
cheese raccoons. Yes.
we should not have started this conversation this early in the morning. I'm not even hungry, and I'm over here like, ooh,
Well, we have to
little
remember, like,
roll.
there's people on who, like, it's lunchtime for them. Like, we just had breakfast, but like this is lunchtime for people.
And now they're really cursing us. Like, I'm hopping off now. Started this conversation this early in the morning. I'm not even hungry, and I'm over here like, ooh,
We have to remember,
roll.
like, there's people on who, like, it's lunchtime for them. Like,
What
we
is
just
happening?
this, but like,
I don't
this is
know. It's
lunchtime
like
for-
glitching here.
That's
Hey,
what's
Rick.
weird.
That's my fault.
Oh, thank you. I think Rick had the YouTube live,
There we
like,
go.
also
Yeah.
playing.
I didn't mute the YouTube stream.
Also, I don't like hearing my own voice. Can we not do that again?
I literally muted myself because I was like, oh no, here we go already. My stuff is not working. I'm like,
Where's the My 5? Where'd it go?
literally, I have it right here today. It's plugged in already. It's ready to go just in case. Oh, all right. Well, hopefully today cooperates all around. And again, we're just going to kind of go over some little starts here, but I have it at 9 exactly our time. So let's go ahead. Let's jump in immediately. We'll go over everything. But the format itself is going to be very similar to yesterday. So just again, a quick little recap here. For our agenda. Today's day 2. Everything in here is going to be listed in Pacific time. So we're going to start off with a brief little introduction. Welcome back, everyone, or welcome if you weren't able to make it today. We're glad you are here. But we're going to start off with our sales cycle, which is going to be covering a little bit more on prospecting. Then we're going to take it through the next course of onboarding and then wrap it up with client management today. So I know we're going to interweave quite a bit of the topics we covered yesterday. So if you, again, didn't make it yesterday, we'll give a kind of a brief overview almost, but it'll really be using those tools to their advantage. Now, I did somehow convince Curtis and Austin to come back with me today. I know I left them high and dry a little bit yesterday, so they didn't kick me out, thankfully. But we'll go ahead and just kind of briefly introduce ourselves. And Austin, I'm going to start with you. Go ahead and just give us a quick recap, how long you've been on the training team at Redtail and what you're going to be covering today.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Austin. I've been a trainer here for going on about 2 years now. Today, I get to kind of double dip. I'm going to be part of sales cycle and client management. So I'm really excited not only to show you how to get more prospects and convert those into clients, but also once you have them as clients, how to manage that relationship, how to make a client feel special, and how to make a client stay with your business.
Right. And Curtis, what about you?
That's me. I'm Curtis. I've been with Redtail 8 years now. Training team, I think like 7 years, maybe 6.5, something like that. I'm like off on the math. We were doing math earlier today, and that threw me off. So, love. Like I said, I'm called the workflow wizard, but I love talking about processes. But today, I'm going to be actually talking a little bit of processes in the prospect to client with Catherine. And then also I will be joining Austin the last session for client management as well.
Perfect. And then just again, I am Catherine Beltran, and I will actually be your whole morning, really. So I'm starting off with Austin at the sales cycle, then kind of Shanghaiing the computer from him for prospecting to clients. So again, we've got quite a jam-packed day. So feel free to still pop in those questions, though. We did also have Rick on yesterday. He's going to come back again today. So any questions you have, make sure to put them in that Q&A. And then we will have the chat on Zoom also available, but please keep that for kind of that interaction you have with us. We're going to be popping in just kind of questions to get your opinions throughout this morning. So don't be afraid, don't be shy, but just make sure you put those questions in the QA, because sometimes they'll get lost in the shuffle of that chat, and we don't want to feel like you were getting ignored. But besides that, one other reminder again is that after this whole session, we're actually going to send you a follow-up that does have, again, the PowerPoint presentation. So if you don't grab it through the little chat today, you'll still have it in that post email. But we are also going to send a survey where we will actually get 3 lucky winners to actually get that prize. So kind of an incentive to help give us some very honest feedback. And then the most important thing that everyone always wants to make sure is this recorded? And yes, it definitely is. This is going to be available on our YouTube channel. It's actually YouTube Live right now, so it'll be almost immediately available post this session. And then we'll also have it on our help desk as well. So quite a bit to again absorb. Don't worry, we'll always give you those reminders throughout today. But let's actually just go ahead and hop in a bit early and start with that sales cycle. Austin, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to say bye to Curtis just for now. We'll welcome him back at our first break, but let's get this going with sales cycle.
All right. Awesome, everybody. Well, thank you for joining me. This is the first segment of the day. This is sales cycle. Before I jump to it, I kind of want to explain what I mean when I say the word sales cycle. So no, this isn't a cycling class. We're not going to be jumping on our Peloton today. This is if you were to think of like the client life cycle, right? So all the way from that first introduction, all the way to, that first client review, maybe the 5th, 6th, 7th client review meeting, right? We're just focusing on that part right at the beginning. So hello, my name is, all the way until, yes, I'm ready to be a client. That is your sales cycle. And so we know that clients don't go from hello, my name is immediately to, yes, I'm ready to trust you with my life savings, right? We got to actually do some convincing. There's usually some kind of process that we're going to work them through. And so that's what we mean when we use the word sales cycle or prospecting. We're basically presenting ourselves, selling ourselves, so that way we can establish that trust and that person can become an official client of our practice.
Man, wouldn't it be nice though? Just immediately, yes, I'm interested. Be like, sweet.
Hey, maybe there's some advisors out there that can do it. I'd be pretty impressed though. All right, so to set the expectation here, I'll give you guys a little bit of a backstory. I was trying to go through Redtail, and I thought about all the different strategies that I had come up with different offices about how they can build their sales cycle in Redtail. And I wanted to think, what was the best one? What was the best one? And I'll be honest with you, I couldn't narrow it down to just one, because what I thought about was there's kind of different tools that we're going to use in different capacities. Kind of think of it like this. You got your drill and you got your screwdriver, right? They both do the same thing. They screw in screws, but the way in which they do it is different, right? A drill is going to have a little bit more speed. A screwdriver is going to have a little bit more precision. And so when you're looking for speed or precision, you're going to kind of bounce between the two tools. And that's kind of how sales cycling works in Redtail too. We're going to use different tools in different scenarios. So today I'm going to show you not only how to use the tool, but when you should use it. So let's jump to the first one here. This one is my favorite. It's got a good balance of speed and precision. It's called tag grouping. Okay. And so what a tag group is when we take contacts in our database and we group them together in a way that's easily accessible and we can get to when we need to. It's also important to know that tag groups are static, meaning that the only way someone gets onto a tag group is if we manually add them to it. And the only way that they come off of it is if we manually remove them from that tag group. Very different than our quick list that you might be familiar with the CRM, where things are being automatically updated, right? With a tag group, we are in control who comes onto that list and who leaves that list. So what are some scenarios that you might want to use tag groups for? I recommend tag groups for people trying to create call or email lists. So if you're building out a campaign or you want to do some smiling and dialing, tag groups are a great way to kind of compile those contacts that you want to reach out to, mark off that you reached out to them, and move on to the next one. Another common thing is when an advisor purchases like a book of business or a marketing list and they need to kind of follow up with those new leads, another great use of tag groups. And then finally, I like tag groups for when we have those contacts that might have fallen through the cracks. It happens almost in every database. I've worked with enough offices now to know that there's nobody who's not guilty of this just a little bit. And that is, we spend a ton of energy, right, recruiting and trying to find new good leads, to put those new good leads into our CRM system, only for them to grow cold and stale over time, just from lack of us following up. So tag groups can be a great way to kind of rejuvenate those and to put them into a list where we're reaching out to that contact again to assess whether or not they're going to be a fit for our practice.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Austin. I always think with tag groups, immediately just think like marketing in a way, where it might be for prospecting alone. And I have offices who, similar to you, they have to use tag groups or they will completely just ignore, for lack of better words, some of those contacts. So this is an easy way to maintain and keep that list. So that way you are purposely leaving them on there until it's time for them to come off. So that's a really good call out for prospecting.
Definitely. Well, let's go to Redtail now, and we're actually going to build a tag group in our database. So I'm going to actually build my list from two sources. The first is I purchased a marketing list recently, Catherine, I don't know if you heard of him. His name is Rave Damsey, not to be confused with that other guy from Tennessee.
Okay.
But I purchased a list there. And so I'm going to follow up with my contacts, but just giving them a call and send them an email to see again if we're going to be a fit to work together. So to do that, I'm going to go over to the contacts tab here on the left-hand side of my database. And then I'm going to use the advanced search tool. And the advanced search tool is going to help me to kind of narrow down to just those leads specifically. And so to do that, I'm going to search by the contact source. So for my type, I will choose contact. For my field, I'll go ahead and choose source. Operand is going to be equal to, and then I'll go ahead and choose my value. When I click this green run button, Redtail is going to search through all of the contacts in the database, and it's going to pull me back all of the contacts that meet that criteria. So now that I have my search results here, I could go ahead and add them to the tag group. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and select them all by choosing this top checkbox here. I'm going to choose contact options, bulk actions, and add to tag group. Now, if I already have an existing list set up for myself, I could go ahead and choose it. Or if I want to create a new list from this page, I could do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and make my March prospecting call list. Okay, and so here we go. I got my March list here, and I'm going to go ahead and add those contacts to this list. And actually, you know what? I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to add the year here too. So 2021 prospecting call list. And we're going to add those to the tag group.
Just a quick reminder that this, with tag group specifically, anyone can create a tag group. So I know sometimes there's always that misconception of, do I have to be an admin to add a tag group? And you don't actually. So everyone has that power. Just wanted to give that reminder before anyone walks away and goes, well, I can't do that. You definitely can.
I'm also going to add in some contacts from another source too. And to do that, I'm going to head over to the reports tab here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to use my favorite report in all of Redtail. And it's under this third section for contact reports. And it's called the no contact report. And so what the no contact report does is it reports on data that isn't in the database, but should be, right? Sometimes that's as valuable or even more valuable than the data that does exist in the database. And so what the no contact report does is it looks for contacts that have not had a note or a completed activity entered in over a period of time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter this for just my prospects that it's been a while since I've last reached out to them. So I'm going to choose this filter option here in the top right-hand corner. And I'm going to choose the time frame in which I want to look. So I'm going to go about a half a year out. I feel like that's probably a good period of time, you know, for people's kind of financial situations to change in the markets to kind of do their thing. And so I think 180 days is a good reach out point. And so I'll set my filter for that. And then again, I just want to narrow it down to my prospects. And then lastly, I'm just going to click this checkbox down here at the bottom. What this does is it just narrows down my list to just the head of households. So just in case I have, you know, maybe one contact and their spouse, and I both haven't reached out to either of those, and they're both labeled as prospects, I just want that contact to show up one time. I don't want to be calling both spouses. So let's go ahead and apply that filter. And Redtail is going to work its magic. And we're going to find that there were 9 contacts in here that we haven't reached out to in at least 180 days.
I'm not gonna lie, looking at our list, we've done a really bad job. Like I'm saying, never 552. So definitely we need to reach out to them. Now,
definitely. Actually, it's kind of a fun activity, you guys, if you want to, while you're watching the call, head to that no contact report and just kind of see, just give a little bit of an assessment of how your team's doing at following up with maybe prospects, your active clients. Like I said, it's one of my favorite reports in Redtail because it's just so revealing about, again, this is data that should be in there, but isn't. All right, so to add these to the tag group, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 9 contacts and I'm going to click this search button here in the top right-hand corner. So 9 contacts, click search, and that's going to take these 9 contacts and send it to the search result page. Very similar to the page that we were just at, right? So now that we're here, we can repeat the same process and we can go ahead and add them to our tag group. So again, we're going to select them, contact options, bulk actions, and we're going to choose the add to tag group. Now, in this case, we can make another tag group here if we want, but I'm going to just go ahead and add them to my existing list here. So let's find that March 2021 prospecting call list, add them to the tag group. And that's going to group these 9 contacts with the 10 contacts that we got from our marketing list.
And I do actually want to point out really quick, we got a question in the chat from Alan. It says, can a contact have multiple tag groups? And the answer is definitely yes.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
can have contacts that apply to as many as possible. Always the big tip is try to avoid having 2 of the same thing. Obviously, you don't want to have duplicates and then run into problems there, but you can have some for marketing for prospecting, marketing for email newsletters or physical newsletters. So yes, short answer, you can have multiple tag groups.
Yeah, definitely. To find our tag groups inside Redtail, we're going to go to the contacts tab here on the left-hand side. We're going to choose the list value here, choose tag groups. And this is going to give us a list of all of the tag groups in the database. So we'll just go and find that one that we've been working with here and open it up. Now that took me a couple clicks to get there. Catherine, do you know a shortcut that I might be able to use to get there faster?
I do actually. So if you are actually just trying to pull up the same tag group, but maybe from a different page, maybe you're not on the contacts, one button that's always in the top right-hand corner, actually, us is going even another way as well. But if you come up to that recently viewed, that little kind of looks like a little kid asking to be picked up, your tag groups are visible from right there as well. So even if you're on the seminars tab, the today page, you can click one button and then find your mailing list right from there or your prospecting list right there. So instead of full on going to contacts, just go up to that little recently viewed guy in the top. You'll get that same list.
Yep. Okay, so now that we're at our tag group, it's time to do that prospecting. It's time to make those phone calls and send those emails to follow up with those contacts. So first up on the list here, we have Al. We can, if we want, like we learned yesterday in Contact Cleanup, we can click into the record to view some more information about Al and navigate to the next record and so on and so forth. But what I want to show you is that you can actually make your calls and your notes right from this page here. So if I just hover over Al's name, we'll see that both his phone number and his email appear. And so what I could do here, go ahead, Catherine.
One thing to point out with this one too is if you're kind of following along in your own database and you're hovering over one and nothing appears, make sure it's marked as primary because that's actually what displays here. So if you're looking at it going, he's homeless, there's no address listed, it's very possible we just don't have it marked as primary. So just keep that in mind as well.
Okay, so now that we have the phone number here on the screen, I'm going to go ahead and just take out my phone. I'm going to give Al a call. And well, sounds like we got his voicemail. So the next step, of course, is we got to put that in Redtail because, again, if it's not in Redtail, it didn't happen, guys. So what we can do is we can navigate over to this action icon here, and I'm going to add in a note right from this page. So here we go. I'm going to add a note that I sent, or excuse me, left voicemail for Al. Okay, we'll put it under the category. I think we have one here for prospecting. Yep, there we go. And then we will go ahead and save that note. Now, the value of this is now that no contact report is going to reset itself, right? We have reached out to Al in a certain amount of time because we entered in a note. We put it in Redtail, so it did in fact happen. Now, another thing I like to do with my prospects when I leave a voicemail is I like to just send them an email too. So just in case they're not too quick to check their voicemails, they also have that same communication in their email. So same thing here. I can navigate over to the action arrow here, and then I can choose the send email option. Now from here, I could, of course, could type out my email if I want to, but instead what I have built in my database is an email template that's just going to allow me to send a quick introduction email to Al I'll click that send email button and we'll go ahead and send off that email to Al so he can also see my voicemail and my communications here via email as well.
Now, we could have even done one other thing that could have been really useful for us with that note specifically. If that's a word or a phrase, or actually this one specifically is a phrase, if that's a phrase that you specifically have to do with your job and you type it frequently, there's one other template you could have picked and created, which is a note template. So if you do have one that is, left voicemail, we'll call back later in the week, or left voicemail, we'll send an email. Obviously, you can only rephrase that so many times before it's the exact same phrasing. So you can always have that same sentence created as a note template. So you just pick that template, go down to the bottom, click save note, and you're done. So make it even easier on you by just creating that note template.
Yeah, great call out. Okay, so now we have sent a call and we've sent an email to Al. And so if we want to, we can leave him on the list here. But what I like to do is I actually like to create a prospecting list for the next month or the next time period. And we're going to roll out over to that next time period. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to open up his record. We're going to come on down to tag, keywords and tags here. And we're going to add him to the April prospect call list and remove him from the March list. And so now when I pull up this list next month in April, I'll be able to see Al already pre-populated on that list. And I'll probably at that point send another call and send another email unless I hear back from him before then. So that's the tag grouping method. Again, I like this because it allows me to conquer lots of contacts all at the same time. I don't have to build out something particular for each contact. I have a whole list and I'm smiling and dialing and sending a couple emails and just making my way through that list. And it's just a way to follow up with lots of prospects all at the same time. All right, let's move on to our next tool. And that is going to be our opportunity tracker inside Redtail. And so I like to equate the opportunities tool to the sales pipeline of the CRM. If you guys have ever done any kind of pipelining sales cycles, it's kind of, we're trying to move a contact from one stage to the next, to the next, to the next, and eventually get them to commit and say yes. Now, opportunities are cool because they can be shared amongst everybody. So if we all want to work together on the same opportunities, we can do that. Or if we want to keep our opportunities exclusive to ourselves, we have the option to make them private through permissions. So what are some scenarios on what you might want to use opportunities for? I like to use it for, again, things that require a little bit more precision. So multi-step processes, we're moving somebody from next to next to next. We're just kind of turning that dial, getting that screw deeper into the hole and moving that prospect along. Another thing that I like about opportunities is they allow for us to assign monetary values to the opportunity, which becomes really helpful when we want to track things like commissions. And then finally, I get this question all the time, and I'm sure you do as well, Catherine, is people ask me, what's the difference between a workflow, like our prospecting workflow that we built yesterday, and an opportunity? Well, with a workflow, we define the process, right? It's kind of set in stone in a sense that we're going to make a call, and then 3 days later, we're going to make a call and send an email. And then 5 days after that, we're going to make a call and send an email, right? We have a predefined template that we're just kind of following along the pathway. With an opportunity, it allows us to be a little more loose, right? We don't have to follow such a strict regiment when we're walking through with our prospects. We can kind of pivot as we need to. And I'm going to show you how that works. So let's jump back into Redtail CRM. My opportunities can be found here on the left-hand menu. And to create a new opportunity, I can either click on this new opportunity button, or of course, we have the quick add option right here in the top right corner where we can add a new opportunity. So I'm going to add it right here. And it's going to ask me to give the opportunity a title. So in this case, I have a new prospect, Catherine. I've been working with Tim Taylor from, you might have seen the show Tool Time.
I have,
So,
big fan.
Yeah, so Tim, he's a little bit prone to accidents. So I was talking with his wife, Jill, and she's just a little concerned about, making sure the bills get paid just in case something were to happen to Tim and he can no longer do a show. So we're going to look into some disability insurance options for him.
Okay.
And I'm going to use opportunities to kind of track that entire process.
Got
So
it.
I'll start off with a title here, disability insurance. And then I can go ahead, I'm just gonna put the Taylor family in here too. So that way I don't get it confused with my other opportunities for disability insurance. And I can give it a description here. Tim is prone to accidents and Jill would like to be protected in case he can't work. Okay. Now it's going to ask us, what is the type here? The type just basically helps us distinguish between new and existing business. So for example, if Tim and Jill were already clients of mine, I might label this as existing business. Versus if this is an entirely new relationship for myself, I'm going to mark this as new business. And that just helps me distinguish between how much of my business is coming from my existing leads or how much is coming from actually new relationships that I'm forming. And then we also have the option here to enter in a permission type. So I mentioned that opportunities can be shared or they can be made private. And so this is how we set it here. We can choose to make this opportunity private by setting it to the team member that we want to do. So I'm going to set this to Tucker's team. And what this means is only if you're Tucker or a member of Tucker's team, do you get the access to see this opportunity. To everybody else, it'd be like it wouldn't even exist. Okay, so we'll go ahead and add that opportunity in now. The first thing I like to do when we add in a new opportunity is I like to link it to the contact. The reason why is because I want to make sure that the information that I'm putting in here gets saved back to the contact record. And so linking the contact is how we do that. I'll just navigate here to the top right corner. We can go ahead and type in Tim here. And I could even link multiple contacts if I want as well. So if I want to put Jill on here as well, I can go ahead and put in Jill. And there she is. And so now we have both of those records linked to this opportunity. So any changes or updates I make to the opportunity is going to be saved back to the contact record. Next, we're going to put in our next steps. This is where we can go to basically put in what are we going to do next, right? I mentioned before that, again, workflows, a little bit more pathway, right? A little bit more defined, opportunities, a little more loose. I can kind of decide how do I want to proceed next with the Taylor family. So for me, it's just going to be setting up a meeting, right? We got to get in together. We got to talk about the needs, how much coverage they're going to need. And so it just involves a conversation. So I'm going to set up a meeting. And then for that next date, we have close date. And so what I like to use close date for is for the due date for the next step. So for example, here, if I want to set up the meeting by next Wednesday, I will go ahead and put in the close date for March 31st. Now, Catherine, you have a different way of using close date. Do you want to explain how you'd like to use close date?
I do. So instead of it being necessarily for the next step, I actually look at that close date as really the end of this opportunity itself. So really that goal finish line, that's how I always interpret close date. So you have two kind of options here. The first one here, Austin's way, it might be more useful to have it where if you want to have more of like deadlines as you go, that's a great way to use that close date. If you're more like me who needs that kind of, I need to see the finish line or I'm going to sit here and go, where am I working towards? Then you can always use that close date again as that finish line.
All right, next field up is going to be stage. And the stage is where we mentioned how opportunities is kind of like a pipeline. So the stage indicates where they at in the pipeline. And that list is entirely customizable to however we build our pipeline. So here I have a drop-down menu. And as we learned yesterday in database cleanup, we have the ability to edit these.
Now,
and so
are
let's
any of
do
these
that.
Defaulted, Austin?
Yes, there's two of them. There is closed lost and closed won. These are the two that aren't editable. And the reason why is because when we enter something into closed lost or closed won, it's going to put it into closed status. And I'm going to show you in a little bit what that actually does in our opportunity tracker. But for now, let's go ahead and just add a new stage here. I want to add in my process. And so to do that, if we remember, we can go to our top right-hand corner of our database. We can choose, actually, hold on, before I do that, let's save this. And then let's go,
like, wait.
let's go to our name in the top right corner. We'll choose the manage your account section. And we're going to come on down to manage database lists. Now, remember, you got to be a database admin in order to make this change. Manage database lists. On the right-hand menu here, we can go ahead and come on down to opportunity stages. And here is where I can build out that pipeline, right? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and give them titles. Now I have a kind of an interesting naming convention here. So let me explain how I like to do these. So first off, I use numbers because that's going to help me to indicate what is next, right? So what comes next in the process. This list is alphabetized. So for example here, let's see if I can find one. So see this discovery process, it starts with the letter D. So if I just put in discovery, it's actually going to show up before gathering contact information and introduction. But instead what I do is I put the numbers here to kind of order them within the list. And then additionally, I use these EB and NB to indicate between existing and new business. And again, that's just helping to keep my list organized so my stages kind of appear next to each other. Okay, and of course, if I want to add to this list, I click the add button, type in the stage that I want to add. And then if I need to edit or delete any of these, I have the option to do that as well. Okay, so once we have our pipeline built out, we're going to go back to that opportunity here. And let's go ahead and, I'm in my closed section. Let's go back to active here. Let's find the Taylor family. And let's go ahead and put in that stage. So the first thing we need to do is have a needs assessment. So I'm going to set that for disability insurance, number 1, discovery and needs assessment. This field here is called the assign to. What that means is it's just delegating responsibility. It's a little bit different than permissions, right? So permissions basically control who has the ability to access or not access the opportunity. Assign to just basically indicates who's going to be like the primary person on this, right? So if I want to say that Tucker is going to be in charge of working with Tim and Jill, I would go ahead and assign it to that opportunity. Now that doesn't prevent somebody else from accessing it. It just lets them know that, hey, this is Tucker's opportunity.
Right. Think of that person as taking the control over it. They're the one who's literally grabbing the reins and running with it. Now, one thing I do want to actually point out really quick, just before we move past that whole permissions concept.
Yeah.
So right now we have it for Tucker's team. Should we want to involve maybe one other user, you can always add another person. So I know every now and then we do have it where maybe there's 2 advisors working on a particular prospect. And normally we have it permission to just our team, but maybe I'm not a part of that team. You can always add just that one user and have it so that way you have a team and a user as well. So really just be aware that those permissions can really be powerful. So that way you're not seeing every single permission and you're not worrying about anyone else's.
Yep. Great call out. All right. So next we have our source. This just indicates where the opportunity is coming from. So for example, if I met Tim and Jill through a website lead for this particular instance, I'd source it as website lead. And this is going to help me later when I want to kind of report back on my marketing channels, right? How successful is my website doing? How are my seminars doing? Am I getting most of my business from referrals or from something different, right? It helps us answer some of those marketing questions so we know how to better allot our resources. And then here is where we start talking dollar bills. So this is the amount field. This is basically assigning that monetary value to that opportunity. So for example here, if I anticipate that Jill and Tim are going to need $200,000 in disability insurance, I can go ahead and enter that in as an amount. And then here for projected revenue, I can go ahead and include how much do I think I stand to gain from that amount. So let's say, for example, here we do about $2,000 in projected revenue. Now the actual revenue is probably going to come later when we actually finish this guy out, right? So putting this into closed lost or closed won. Okay. And so this is how we would kind of set up our opportunity. We're going to save the opportunity. And then it's going to become an active opportunity in our database. And so now when we want to kind of work through our leads, we can go to 1 or 2 places. We can, of course, go to the opportunities tab here on the left-hand side. We can choose the filter option here to filter for just the opportunities that are assigned to us. So I'm going to filter here for Tucker and apply the filters. And again, it's just going to show the opportunities that Tucker is currently working on. Another spot that I can go to is on the Today page. On the Today page, we have an option here called the Opportunity Tracker. And the Opportunity Tracker basically gives us a look at our upcoming opportunities within the next 30, 60, or 90 days. So we can kind of choose how far in the future do we want to look. And Redtail is going to give us kind of a dashboard of our upcoming opportunities.
And technically, there's also even one more. So go ahead, Austin, pull up Tim's record. So whether that's from a recently viewed or the search,
Yeah.
if you're that's not English, reverse. If you happen to have that contact record open, maybe you just gave them a call and again, you left them a voicemail or something like that. If you look on the left, so we'll have Tim Taylor accounts, click on that more, you're going to find specifically the opportunities just for that particular contact. So again, if you're already on that record, instead of having to hop down and scroll through all the other ones, just go to there specifically as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So we are going to fast forward in time. We're going to hop in our DeLorean and we're going to go into the future where we've already worked through the process with Tim and we have signed up for disability insurance. And so I'm going to indicate that as a win inside my opportunity tracker. So on the left-hand side here, I'm going to choose opportunities. And then we are going to come on down and open up the opportunity tracker for Tim. And we mentioned those two system defaults, right? For stage, we have close won and close lost. This is the finish line for an opportunity, right? We're going to indicate close won, meaning that we've won. There's no longer any more steps. I can put in the date that we would have finished this opportunity. So for example, here, maybe we took us to maybe about the middle of April. At this point too, if I want, I can go ahead and record my actual revenue and click save. So now what this has done is it's moved my opportunity for Tim from active on the opportunity tracker to closed on the opportunity tracker. And so if I choose closed, I can see Tim as well as some other disability insurance policies that I've opened up over the course of the last month. And so now I'm going to show you how we can actually use this information to track things like, for example, commissions. So we're going to equip the power of Excel here, and I'm going to click the export button here to send this information over into Microsoft Excel. Okay, so my Excel sheet has just downloaded. It's opened up in a new page here. Catherine, can you see that okay?
Yep, I'm a little blind, so maybe scrolling just a bit.
Gotcha.
Like these sometimes work.
Let's see here. Find my...
I know it's always hard to see it. So I always just do like the command plus. That should help zoom in as well.
Oh, good call, good call.
I'm a keyboard person, and then I always forget about that when I'm sharing someone else's screen. But really what we're capturing here is all of that data. So if you're like me, who is an Excel fiend and loves having it still, as much as I love this year, sometimes I understand that reports are useful for, say, staff meetings. This might be a really good time to run that report and have that in there for you. Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at what we have here.
Yeah, so we have our 3 disability insurance opportunities. We have our amounts, we have our projected revenues, and our actual revenues. So to calculate maybe our commission on these actual revenues here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to enter in a sum feature here to add up these 3. And so in total, we had about $7,300 in revenue. And then so I know that my commission on that is about 30%. And so what I'm going to do is equals, and I'm going to multiply that by 30%. And that's going to be my commission amount. Okay, and so that's if we want to do calculations. The other way that we can do it is we can also send this to a PDF report. So if I want to slam this paper down on my boss's desk and show him how I've been working those phone lines and making business happen, I can also choose this PDF button here, which is going to go ahead and make this into a printable format. So here we go. Here's my opportunities. And again, it's going to go ahead and show each of the opportunities that I completed, what was our actual and projected revenue, and the total of all of the amounts. So you can use a combination of both of those reports to, again, kind of mark your successes, right? When you complete an opportunity, the end goal is to be able to show that off, to be able to track that for your own internal purposes. And so opportunity tracker helps us with all of that.
Now, Austin, there's one thing I think we should probably point out for anyone who's really new, I should say, to opportunities. So if you can actually click into the disability insurance for the Taylor family,
Sure.
at the bottom, once we're here, we're actually going to see there's two sections for notes and documents. Now, by default, when you come into that 0 notes and you add it in, it's actually really only going to attach it to the opportunity itself. Now, you actually taught me something last time, Austin. I have to give you a call out on this one, because if I wanted it to not only exist in the opportunity, but also on Tim Taylor's or even Jill's record, that's where that additional linked contact is. So if you were like me, who was just saving a bunch of it to the opportunity, going, that's fine, but now you also want it on those, add it as an additional contact and it'll go to both places. So wanted to give you that shout out because you taught me that last time. And I was like, I'm still learning things. So use that again, should you need those notes to appear in multiple spots.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about just kind of having it in that main note feed, right? So if we click over into the Taylors here, let's go to their records. What I like to have is I want to have that note front and center. So right here in my face with latest notes. Now, technically, if we put the note attached to the opportunity, we could still go into more, choose opportunities, find our closed opportunities, right? We're kind of a couple of clicks in.
Yeah.
So that's why I like to use that linked opportunity, or excuse me, that linked contact. So that way it's kind of saves it front and center right to that note section where it kind of see it right away when I come to that either one of their records. All right, let's jump to our third tool of the day. And this one's going to be kind of a little bit of a review from what we covered yesterday. And that is a prospecting workflow. And again, I kind of hinted at it, but this is where we have a defined process, right? We're just making sure that we're following up with our contacts in a timely manner. And of course, I love prospecting workflows because they have my favorite tool, and that's automations, right? I can automatically set these to take place when I add new prospects to my database. So again, if you weren't able to join us yesterday, you can review the day one materials where we go through and we basically work our way through this prospecting workflow. And so here are some scenarios to use workflows. It's when you want to just set it and forget it, right? We're too busy to maybe go in and put in the information into the opportunities, right? We want things to just automatically happen, and we want tasks to be assigned to our team members to make sure that we're following up with that contact in a timely manner. Workflows are also awesome when we have multiple teams playing a role in the sales cycle process, right? We're not relying on our team to go pull up that tag group or to go check that opportunities, right? Instead, they're going and getting workflow task notifications right within all of the workflow tasks that they're used to seeing. So again, if you have multiple roles, right, playing in the sales cycle, consider using workflows. And then again, right, when it's defined, we're making a call, we're sending an email, then we're sending an email, then we're sending a call, then we're making a final call, right? It's a defined process. We don't need that flexibility to go left and right like we would with opportunities. So again, just to recap how that would work here, I'm going to go back to Al's record just to show off that process. We'll go ahead and open up his contact record here. And if we want, we can go ahead and start the workflow process by choosing the plus button, adding the workflows, and choosing the prospecting workflow that we would like to go ahead and apply to his record. And there we go. So the tasks will then be assigned out to the team members, and we'll begin making sure that we're following up with Tim. And as we learned yesterday, we can also use the power of automations to make that happen.
Now, we did get a question in the chat here. Well, actually, I'm going to interpret it as a question. So yes, you can link a workflow to an opportunity, and I know that might be odd to some people, but you can actually. So if you do want it more structurized and you want it all attached, you can technically do that. But as far as automating an opportunity, like we can with a workflow where you add the contact and a workflow can automatically trigger, there's currently not a process for that, where if you add a contact, it'll also automatically generate an opportunity. So that is a really good question there. But if we're really trying to keep it as automated as possible, workflows really might be that solution you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really kind of cool way to end this all, is kind of showing how we can use these all together. So if you remember when we called Al, right, we used our tag group, and then we just added a workflow to Al's record to help us work through the process. Let's also add an opportunity to Al, so that way we can track those important revenues, right? So we'll go to the opportunities tab here. We're going to add in a new one here. And I'm just going to call this, let's do financial planning for Al Borland. So I can give it a little bit of a description so I kind of know why this opportunity exists. Met Al at a seminar and he is interested in a financial plan. Okay. So again, just a little bit of description to jog my memory about why this opportunity exists. It's going to be new business here, and I'll go ahead and add that opportunity. So of course, I'll want to add in Al here and tag him to this opportunity. And then right below that, we can see that we have the linked workflow option. And so if I want to add in a workflow to the opportunity, I'll click the add. And I can either start a new one here if I hadn't already on Al's record, or I can link an existing workflow that I already have going in the process. So again, I'll choose my prospecting workflow, link the workflow to the opportunity. And then what I like to do for, as far as the next steps go, is I just like to put in see workflow, right? Because workflow is really what's going to delegate what happens next in the process. And then again, we can always still take advantage of some of those other options, like for example, the stages, the amounts, if applicable. So that's a way that we can kind of use all of those tools all together. We started with Al in a tag group, we made a call, we sent an email, then we added in that workflow process. And finally, we're adding in that opportunity. So that way we can track them in the pipeline, track those important revenues, and have that workflow linked to that opportunity.
Exactly.
All right. So to wrap things up here, I want to know from you guys. So let's head to the chat. Which one do you find is the most useful in the sales cycle? Is there one in particular that, you use commonly that you'd like to advocate for? Or if you don't use any of these and this is your first time learning about them, is there one that you're really excited to try? So let's open up the chat here, Catherine, and let's see what the responses are. I'm curious to see what everybody thinks.
So we have like on the buzzer here from Panya, opportunities. Ooh.
Megan likes tag groups. So do I, Megan. Another advocate for Sarah for opportunities. Sierra likes workflow love.
I was like, finally, there's workflow love.
There it is. Yeah, I'm glad that we decided to include that yesterday. Opportunities, workflows, opportunities. Yes. So a lot of love for all the different tools, right? And it really kind of comes down to, what is your sales process? Is it a heavily evolved process where we're taking our contacts through nice and slowly? Or are we kind of at scale, right? We're smiling, we're dialing, we're just trying to qualify those leads. So again, different scenarios are going to call upon different tools. So thank you guys for your responses. We got about 3 minutes. So I'm going to just throw one more bonus tool in the mix here. And that is seminars. So seminars can also be a wonderful way for you to manage prospecting. And if you are in the business of doing events, this could be a great way to kind of establish your credibility as an advisor and show that, you know what you're talking about and you can provide good service to your contacts. And so when should we use seminars? When we're providing educational presentations for attracting new clients. And seminars also kind of serve a secondary spot, and that's helping us keep all the tasks needed to host a great event. So they kind of double dip a little bit. They help us with the planning process and all those tasks and, booking the catering and working with the venue and making sure that everything is up to a really good event. And then it also has that bonus feature of being able to add our contacts into that seminars, and we can actually track who attended, who no-showed. If they attended, did they schedule a meeting, right? We can build out our processes with seminars and build out a seminar to track that information. So that is a bonus tool for you here. Seminars can be a great way for advisory firms to, again, establish your credibility, reach out to the community, and kind of show the services that you can provide.
And I'm actually even going to say one more thing, and this is actually really probably why I love seminars the most. Seminars is the one spot where you can also add guests. So guests are in themselves, like if I'm already having more of that prospecting list and they're bringing someone else as well, that's just going to keep adding to my sales pipeline of more contacts for me to kind of dip my fingers into, I should say. So this is that one kind of hidden thing. I feel like a lot of people aren't aware that you can add contacts without adding contacts to the database. So don't be afraid to use guests and keep track of really everyone who's part of that seminar or webinar that we're really hosting.
That reminds me of a conversation that I had with an advisor at our Retail University Master's program. And it was both of them, he and she, were telling me about how one of their most prosperous prospecting tools was actually hosting client appreciation events. They put on like these really cool events where, like, I think they did like a tequila tasting and they did like a cooking kind of like class, and they would do all these like really cool events to like show appreciation to their existing clients. And then they allowed for those existing clients to bring a guest. And of course that guest was like, this is awesome. Like, I need more of this in my life. And so it became a really cool tool as far as attracting new talent. So yeah, another really great call out there with yes, and being able to say that, yes, even if you're doing a seminar for an existing client base, you can still use that guest feature as prospecting.
I love it. I'm not gonna lie, I would be part of them. Like, you give me cooking classes,
that
sounds great. Like, especially with how crazy last year has been. Yeah, I'm gonna double down on that one.
Well, we're right at about 10 minutes from the hour. So it is time to head into our break. We'll welcome Curtis back here. Now, guys, for the break here, don't worry. You don't need to stick around. If you got to go take care of some business, use the restroom, whatever you got to do, go do your thing. We'll be back starting again in 10 minutes. If you hear us talking, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're starting. We just kind of get bored of twiddling our thumbs here. And so we'll usually spur up a conversation. So if you'd like to participate, go ahead and open up your chat. We'll go ahead and just keep the conversation going. But again, we're not going to be doing any more content until the top of the hour.
So I finally got my cup of coffee.
Ooh, finally.
Oh, it was very nice. I drank the whole cup. And that's what I did while you guys were talking, was I drank a cup of coffee.
Curtis, how do you take your coffee? Do you do are you like a cream and sugar person, or you just I like it black?
Okay. Lately though, I've been adding a little bit of vanilla syrup to it just to give it a little like extra something. Yeah, but also here's the thing. Use brown sugar instead of regular sugar. It's just a much better flavor for your coffee if you're going to use sugar. Brown sugar over regular sugar. I'm here for it. Love it. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh, I'm gonna be weird. I actually don't add sugar to my coffee.
Oh, well, that's fine. Well, I mean, honestly, like, I get it. I can drink coffee plain, but I blame my great grandmother. She started
she's not even here to defend herself.
No, she's not. I blame my great grandmother because she used to live in this little house behind us. So it's like she had like a little like 1-bedroom house that my dad built behind our house, and I would walk down there like the 10 feet it was and eat breakfast every morning. She would make breakfast every single morning for me. I loved it. Eggs over medium. Getting off topic, but she would also serve. I was 5 years old and gave me a cup of coffee, like cream and sugar. It was mainly cream and sugar, but she was giving me coffee when I was 5 years old. The first time I decided to like quit drinking coffee, I was 13.
Oh my God.
Like, I was it's time to take a coffee break. Like I'm gonna like get off coffee at 13 years old. Is that weird?
So Curtis, Andrew has a suggestion for your coffee next time. He says to give a little small tab of butter inside your coffee.
Like the bulletproof coffee.
It is actually really good. I'll do that. Like, it's weird. You're right. Because you're like,
I'm here for it. Yes, I'm here for butter and coffee. Also, like, we've upped our butter game in the past few weeks. Like, instead of buying like just like the regular generic like butter, we've recently Kerrygold like the Irish
Oh, God,
butter
yeah.
brand. Like, oh my goodness, the hollandaise sauce that we made on like this last weekend was even better than ever before. And
Oh
just
yeah, it's not always cheap, but it's worth it.
oh
Like,
yeah, no, yes, Kerrygold butter, yes, that butter, yes. Everyone's on my side with this butter. Like
Yep.
it once it was one of those times where it's like, hey, it's time to splurge a little bit. What are we gonna do? We splurge at the grocery store, nowhere else. We upgrade our butter.
Step up our butter game. So we also have a suggestion of lemon zest in coffee that I haven't tried. But you bet I'm going to. First of all, I'm gonna have to explain why I'm stealing a bunch of lemons from my neighbor's house. But after I do that, then I'm just gonna sit there and be like, well, this is why.
All right. Yeah. Oh, so he says sub heavy cream for half versus half and half for coconut oil.
I haven't tried coconut oil.
Use heavy cream. I'm down for using heavy cream on everything.
Same.
Heavy cream, butter. We got brown sugar, vanilla syrup. Like at this point, like that's just sugar. Is that all sugar? No, I don't. Is butter a carb?
Okay, so don't zest lemon if you use creamer. Okay, so I'll have to remember that because I totally would have and been like, what is the suggestion?
Okay, so is it use it for espresso and then just like zest on top, or is it like a mix-in kind of thing? Like that's what I'm curious about. Is this just like a quick little zest? And I don't know. Actually, we talked about this at the last RTU about different coffee methods.
Last time I was trying to give up coffee and have tea, and as we could see, it's been a month and that didn't go well.
Don't give up. Don't give up, Catherine. Power through.
Yep. It's there. I do have some good ones now, but I still just love coffee so much. Like I will just. But on a different topic, only because you know what, Ashlyn, I want to give a shout out to this. So Ashlyn said that she bought a physical whiteboard so she can correctly whiteboard instead of getting frustrated and throwing away so many pieces of paper. And she highly recommends this to everyone. Buy a whiteboard. So I will normally agree with that as well. I won't show you my normal background because it's a bunch of white bricks that I'm assuming everyone else will just interpret as whiteboard. But you know, for a while we were just joking about making ticks on it. I might be serious about it at this point.
On that white brick wall that you have?
Yes, the white brick wall I have.
I should start doing that. I'm gonna put up a background where I'm just putting marks.
So part of me was tempted to do it at this point and just be like, it's been 365 days since I saw a human. Just dramatic about it.
Catherine, I wanted to build off of what you said there, which is buying a whiteboard. Now, if anybody on this call knows me, they know that I have a probably unhealthy aversion against Post-it notes, especially depending on their usage. However, I have seen offices utilize Post-it notes, particularly multicolored Post-it notes, as a really good way to write down all of the tasks that they have to do in a particular process, and then put the Post-it notes within their steps that they put on a whiteboard or even on a table or something like that. And that's a really good, efficient way of moving one task from step 1 to step 3 if you feel like it needs to, move. So that is one of the few times where I will promote the usage of Post-it notes, is in the whiteboarding and the brainstorming of your workflow. I think it's a really good use of them.
Oh, especially like I'm all on board for the Post-it. You can still use the whiteboard with it. Stick them on the whiteboard. Yeah. But the Post-its allow you to move them around so much easier than like erasing the whiteboard. And then it's like, 'cause I'm one of those people who's like not going to take time to look for like a cloth to erase the whiteboard. I'm just going to like use my hand, and then it's just,
you animal.
Yeah, I'm a mess.
Oh well.
And I'm here to train. That's my
a pad of legal paper a week. Ashley, that's okay. You should see. I have nonsense. I have notes everywhere. I have notes here. I have all kinds of scrap papers and things like that from the old school Red Tail legal pad with the original logo on it. This is like vintage paper that I'm writing on.
Rick, if I could recommend, maybe you should look into like, I don't know, maybe like a CRM to kind of practice notes and those tasks.
Maybe.
If you want, we could set up a training. I could show you how to use one.
I would be interested in that.
Now we had Ed jumped into the chat and he sent a list of like animals that he has all over his property, and I actually have a lot. I love that he put Canada geese because it is that time. And so Ed, I also have Canada geese that appear here during this time. We've named them Ozzy and Harriet. And the saddest part here, if you don't know, Canada geese, like they mate for life. Like they get like they're always in twos. And I'm really sad because Harriet seemed to disappear, and it's just like Ozzy out there, like just in there. Like, and the other day, like he was like flying around, honking, trying to find her, and I don't know what happened to her, and I'm really sad. So now I just brought the mood down.
Well,
Yeah,
great. Now
thank
we're
you.
all going to be worried. Now I can't focus on what we're doing for the rest of the day because I'm going to be worried about a Canadian goose.
No.
Well, it's very sad, like because like they're they mate for life, and now he's just on his own. I don't know where she went, and I'm very sad about that.
All right, fly free.
I
Fly
have
Someone
nothing.
quickly
Fly
say
free,
something more
free,
cheerful.
Ozzy.
Like again, like the only drama I get into now is like the weird animals that come onto the property.
God.
You should ask Cassie if she's seen her.
Oh no, yeah, Cassie is tight with both of them, and she's confused about it too.
Oh. We had a duck one time that flew into our pool, and Lou hates birds. I should start with that. Bargain. The duck flew towards him. Panic, just sheer panic, and then just like, what the heck? And I honestly wish I would have gotten it on camera because it was the best thing I've ever seen. And it just,
I wish geese were nicer, or ducks. Like they're not like the nicest. Like
yeah.
And if they think you have bread, like they come to attack.
Oh yeah. I know the Disney ducks are probably like, where's all my food? So they're probably excited for it to reopen. All right. Well, on that note, I have it at the top of the hour again. So this time we're actually going to say goodbye to Austin, and Curtis is going to stick around.
Oh, I'm staying?
We're going to, yeah, that's going to be you and me.
All right, let's do this.
So I'm going to remind Curtis he's sticking around here.
Right, okay.
But
I
we're
was really
actually,
just hoping to stay around for like commentary.
Honestly, commentary is good because this time we're actually going to take it from not the prospecting, but it's actually the onboarding portion. Ooh. So commentary is really useful here because obviously this is the exciting part. This is the yay, they actually like us.
This is things moving forward.
Yeah. So during this course, we're actually going to talk about, again, we're no longer in that prospecting, but it doesn't mean we're going to stop using all of those tools we mentioned. We're actually still going to use quite a few of them, but this time we have a little bit different in terms of ideas of what we need to focus in on. So it's really building up that contact card that we have, because again, now they're not prospects. We need to update them. We don't want them to reflect incorrectly, but it's also, again, still taking them through that process itself. So we'll say process like 800 times today, because that's really the whole concept. You're going from one step to the next step, to the next step, to the next, until it starts to just become second nature to us. But in here, again, we're going to really focus on that whole client relationship, or making that client relationship, I should say. So we're going to start off really with the basics of basics, only because you'd be surprised how many times we don't even start with this. And then 6 months down the road, we go, didn't they become a client? Why are they still labeled a prospect? So it's starting off with those contact details. So the very, very first thing is updating that status and category. Now, status is really the highest level that you can actually customize. We're not talking about that type because you can't change that one, but status you can. So every now and then I'll work with offices where they'll just have like prospect and lead, and then they won't have client. And I go, well, how are you identifying who you're actually working with? And they're like, that's a good question. That's why we need you. So make sure you have all of those relationships that we really talked about yesterday. And it's really having those clients, those prospects, those leads, but making sure we actually have the clients so we can label them correctly. Now, category is actually where you get to classify those clients. So think of this as almost like a sub-level to status. This is where you can segment that business. So I will say there's no right or wrong definitive answer on how you have to do categories. I've seen the A, AA, AAA, platinum, gold, silver, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. However you do it, make sure you're actually using it. Now, I am going to also shamelessly plug that style guide back into here, because just like Austin had mentioned yesterday, I might define this person as a AA But Curtis might say, hey, no, they've got a lot more money. I'm putting them as a AAA. So make sure you have that understanding on saying, hey, this is the definition for a single, this is the definition for double, this is the definition for triple, so on and so forth.
Well, and even there's a lot of different ways you can interpret even like the AA, AAA. I think we
Exactly.
brought this up before. I don't think we brought it up yesterday, but when we do AA, AAA, we essentially have taken that from an office who actually had a word for each A. And so it really meant that's how it determined. Like if we held their accounts, they got at least one A. If they were an advocate, they gave us referrals, they got another A. And then the third one is essentially like we call it attitude, and that can be interpreted a few different ways, but it's essentially like I mean, I see it as people who need a little more extra handholding, a little more care. It's like, who are those people that call, Friday at 4:55, and, need that extra little, like, hey, let me reach out. Somebody I need to be a little more proactive with and reach out to. They get another A. So if you get any two of those A's, you're a double A. You get one of them, it really can be sorted in many different ways. And so really what you're saying, like, Catherine, is like, define it, whether it's by money or it's by how you're reaching out to them. I love that.
Now, Chris, go ahead and actually reference this next one, the client since date. Why
Ooh,
is that so important?
I love the client since date. It's because you need to know, like, when did they actually become a client? Because a lot of the times, like when you change it from prospect to client, you want to know, when did that actually happen? Now, because those statuses are actually customizable, not every single database has decided that they want to have prospect or client. So based off of it being customizable, Redtail, we can't necessarily code and say, hey, they became a client on this day, because client is a customizable field. But if you actually use the field that we have of client since, then it's reportable, then it's searchable. You can say, hey, show me everybody who became a client, who has the status of client right now and became a client in this year or last year or 5 years ago. You can actually use that to your advantage if you're filling out the client since. And that's what's important. If people are becoming clients, you need to mark when that date is.
I'm really glad you brought up that whole concept of searching, because you're right. I had an office who wasn't using this field. And so they had no idea when this was coming out because they didn't put any notes. All they did was change the status. And that was it. So really, you're helping your future self more than the current self, really looking into it. Now, there's also some other fields that we should really update as well, like source and referred by. This is actually also coming back to the whole marketing concept that Austin brought up earlier. But date of birth and marital status and marital anniversary, that's to help with that whole client relationship. I know I can probably safely speak for both of us on saying that I have a lot of offices who send out birthday cards or have that even broken down in tiers. If you're the highest tier, you get a phone call. If you're the middle tier, you get a birthday card. The lowest, you get an email. No matter what, you're still reaching out to them, but filling out those really kind of important dates to them, it builds that relationship. So you're not just another number in the system.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, like we've been saying, every single field in this contact detail section can be put into a search. So even like Catherine, you mentioned, the source field, that source dropdown is supposed to be, where are our clients coming from? If not only do I want to see who became a client, but you see, like, this source says radio lead. Okay, hey, maybe I have a radio ad that's out there. If I'm not tracking that they're coming from that radio lead, then I'm not able to actually run reports. So if I actually say, hey, this contact is a radio lead, and I'm putting in that they became a client on this day, I can then run a search and show me every single client who became every single contact who became a client in 2020 with the source of radio lead. And if I run that search and nobody's on it, why am I paying for a radio ad? It's like, hey, I can actually track that information. Is it actually worth me having that source out there anymore? Is it a waste of time? So it's really beneficial to have that information.
And then the last one, I shouldn't say it's like the last but not least, it's actually very, very useful, servicing and writing advisor. Again, this is a field that sometimes, I don't know if we just don't find that value, or if we start off as like a one-person office and feel like we'll never grow. And then here we are 6 months, a year later, and there's now 3 other advisors. This really helps define who are your clients. Again, every now and then I'll have an office who doesn't fill this in, and then I'll ask, well, how do you know whose is whose? And they'll go, good luck. good faith, good search and looking over it and trying to remember, this is an easy searchable field to help explain this is my person. So I'm really glad you brought up that whole searching, because that is something that's very useful when it comes to clients and really reaching out to them. But those aren't the only fields that have value when it becomes a client. Now, I'm going to talk about keywords first, and then I'm going to pass it off to Curtis to talk about user-defined fields. But keywords are a predefined selection that can be used to group similar contacts. So we kind of like to think of this as an inherent yes or no question. Yes, you are a 401k client. No, you're not. So you don't get that keyword. Yes, you are a tax client. Then yes, you get that keyword. So we oftentimes, again, have offices who have tax clients, investment clients, insurance clients, but want to break it down further into a 401k client, a 403b client. And instead of putting that into that whole status field where you can only have one value, use keywords, because you can put as many as you want on there. Now, it's not only limited to services, of course. This is another way to really, again, attach important pieces of information. I had an office who did billing a little bit differently. They had some clients who were billed in advance and some that were billed in arrears. And they had no way of knowing it besides this literal Post-it note on their desk where I kind of shivered myself. I'm like, oh, you can lose that quick, fast, and in a hurry. Put that in on the contact records and say, hey, this person's in advance billing, this one's arrear. You can search off of that. Now, I know another one that Curtis and I both love is holidays. If you send out holiday cards, you can get very specific by saying, hey, this one celebrates Christmas, this one celebrates Hanukkah. Hey, for religious reasons, this one celebrates nothing. You can always decide that with these keywords. Now, if keywords are that inherent yes or no question, inherent yes or no question, I knew what I was talking about there. Curtis, tell me, what are user-defined fields?
Well, user-defined fields are, just like it says, it's a field defined by the user. So in this case, think of where we have status and category. Status is the field name. Category is the field name. The values, like under status, the value is you get to customize that part of it of active, inactive, prospect. Same with category, how we're talking A, AA, AAA, you get to customize that. But a user-defined field lets you create the field name and also how you want to place the value. So if there's a field that doesn't exist in Redtail and you want to report on it, you can actually create your own user-defined field and place it on the contact. So for instance, as an example, preferred meeting type. Hey, that's great. Hey, we've started offering Zoom meetings, face-to-face, and also like over the phone. Like you can create a user-defined field called preferred meeting, place it on the contact record. If they say, I prefer a Zoom meeting, you can actually place that as the value. Same thing goes for if you want to track their alma mater or any kind of like personal information, even down to like how they like to take their cup of coffee. Hey, I know that when Curtis comes in that he prefers a scoop of brown sugar and a little bit of heavy cream. And we're gonna skip out on the lemon zest, how we got those those suggestions today, because it affects the cream. You can put that information of, hey, I know how they take their coffee when they come into the office and I have it ready for them. It's just that little bit of extra touch that if you want to put it, you can actually label that in your CRM. Absolutely love that option.
I agree completely. So before we really move on to the next one, I do want to hop into the database actually and point out that this is going to be something that's under the admin. So if you come up to your name again, come on down to manage your account, scroll all the way to the bottom until you can't scroll anymore. That's when you're going to find that admins only manage database list. So both keywords and user-defined fields will be added back here. But again, the bigger difference, you're just adding keywords in here, just typing in that word or phrase that you want versus that user-defined field. Like Curtis is saying, you pick how you want it to set up. So that preferred meeting type, we only have 3 choices. I can always add more should I add more options, but I don't want to have a free form text saying, hey, I want it all phrased correctly at the same time. It's not going to happen. I promise you there.
And another way I like to put it is keywords are always an implied yes. Mm-hmm. It's an answer to a yes or no question where the answer is yes. So like Catherine said, are they a 401k client? Yes, they get the keyword of 401k. But if it's something where I actually need to know the answer, is it yes versus no? We like to talk about RMDs a little bit. You can create an RMD specific user defined field for whether or not they took their RMD for 2021. yes or no. I actually need to know. I can't just be an implied yes. I need to actually have the value of no, and that's what makes user-defined fields a little extra special than the keywords themselves. It just gives you more information if you need it.
It's actually a really good call out on that one. So as far as, well, you've got them built, now what type of scenario? So I'm going to come back to Al where we were at earlier, because maybe while I'm prospecting, I learned a couple of things in here. This is down here at the bottom. So keywords are going to be over to the left of tag groups where we were at earlier. We already added that mailing monthly email, but if I needed to add more, I could do that from here. So if I know that he's going to be a 401k client, I could put that in here. If I know what holidays he already celebrates, because maybe we already talked about that, again, I could put that in here. And then user defined fields on an individual contact right here. So again, if I know how he takes his coffee, and that's one I have in here, I can flat out say, hey, he is an espresso. Oh, I can spell.
There's
There
no
we go.
There's
Espresso
no
with
espresso.
lemon zest.
Espresso.
This is
It's
why God
espresso.
created
like, you
whatever.
gotta
We're
spell
gonna
that
not worry about
correctly.
that. I cannot spell today. Espresso. It's with an S. There we go. Now I deleted the wrong thing. Anyways, don't spell very well, apparently. So espresso with lemon zest. I'm gonna just add that. I'm not gonna worry about it right now. Apparently, I can't spell today. But there's
It's
that
okay.
user defined field. Now, similar to anything else, if you feel like you need to edit it because you can't spell like I can, you need to delete it, you can always do that from here, just like you can edit a keyword. Now, the biggest difference between these two is that keywords, I can come back to that advanced searching that we were at earlier, and I can find everyone who has that particular keyword and search off of that and say, hey, I want to know everyone who does have that 401k client, click run. You're not going to find user defined fields in here. So if you have been looking in here and going, clearly losing my mind, are these working? I cannot tell anymore. You are perfectly fine. You're not losing it. User defined fields are reportable. So you're going to want to come to reports, come on down at the bottom. There's that contact user defined field. And similar to what we did earlier, filter is where you're going to want to start with. So again, if I want to know everyone's coffee preference, not just Al's, I can leave that as contains, run that filter, and I'll get everyone's in here. So we get quite a few different options. We'll have to add a couple of the new ones we learned today, but this is again that big major difference between the two.
Now also on top of that, maybe and look, we're going to narrow down and still talk about coffee preference here. You get to choose how the value is placed. We put it's any text. You saw Catherine can type whatever she wants. Maybe you only offer like 4 different types of coffee. Say, hey, like it's not unlimited. We only have 4 ways that, we can actually set it up for you. In that case, you can actually create the field name with a drop down instead. So really there is a difference. You can make every single user defined field free form text where you type out whatever you want. But if the value is a limited number, we highly suggest do the value drop down instead. Because in this regard, if you wanted to search for anybody who likes espresso, but Catherine doesn't know how to spell espresso.
I also just realized I'm missing the R. That's why.
Yeah. Now, that's a great example, actually, because of that. We're going to say that was a planned mistake, for training purposes. It's for training purposes. That's why we can't spell. But if we were to go up and type in the filter and say, I want to find everyone who likes any kind of espresso, actually keep it and actually spell espresso correctly. There's no X.
Is it an S? Was I right?
Yes. Yeah,
okay,
it's an S.
I was right
espresso.
the first time, and then an X, then I questioned it. So there we go. And I actually put the R. My keyboard did work with me now.
So now when you apply the filters, the one that we added for Alborn, it's not going to come up because it was spelled incorrectly. So keep in mind the any text, even though it's great to list like very specific details, if you're going to use the reports for it, sometimes a little more difficult because we all type things incorrectly on a regular basis. Like that's just how it goes. Like, but
there we go.
Right click and the spell check in the browsers is my best friend.
Yep. And then sometimes there we go. So that's really what we're pointing out. So then if you do notice that, hey, Catherine in my office can't spell to save her life, let me go fix that. You can go and fix that. And then that way your report is correct. Now, again, those aren't the only 2 things we want to worry about. We want to actually talk about a couple more things when it comes to those clients. So besides getting those client details, besides adding in the actual contact details themselves, we want to talk about those relationships, because again, it's usually not just one person. It kind of is like the whole tree branch of other connections that come with it. But there are distinct differences here. So we have two kind of options here, and there's family and memberships. So family, I always like to think of the tax definition: immediate family members, head of household, the spouse, and then if I can still claim my children, putting the children in there, or dependents. I shouldn't limit it to children. But again, that's really who we're thinking about with family. One of the biggest things we always get asked about is, well, what do I do with those kids who are over 18, who are also married, and now they're also going to become a client? How do I connect it all? Well, you want to actually break them out of the family first, because you can only belong to one family at a time. And if that child's now married, if I didn't break them out of the family, I can never add in their spouse. I can't add in if they have any children. So think again, that tax definition. Now, Curtis, what's memberships then?
And memberships, I mean, like this is sort of a reiteration of what we went over yesterday, but memberships is everything else. You know, family, tax definition, memberships, any other kind of possible relationship you can think of. You know, so if you do want to list an ex-spouse or children that are grown up and their own clients, trust accounts. I mean, there's so many different options. Even if you want to mark, you know, who their roommate is. If you have two clients that, you know, live together but aren't actually, you know, the same household, you can link them together still in memberships in any kind of way that you want. I love memberships for that, because you actually get a visual representation of how your client is linked to everyone else.
Exactly. I even saw recently someone had to keep track of board memberships. So specifically, they had to keep literally every single one, which was new to me, but it was extremely important to them, which brings up something really important with memberships, and that is you can add more to it. So should you again be looking at your own database going, well, I don't have 401k provider and participant. How do I get that one? You can add it to that managed database list. So I'm going to come back. I know I kind of glitched my page here, so let me come on back. Actually, I'm just going to stay on Al here. So family is at the top here. Now, similar to, I believe, what we mentioned yesterday, just because they're single doesn't mean they don't belong to a family. It's just a family of me, myself, and I, which nothing's wrong with that. So if you come into it, but they do happen to get married, you can always add that spouse later on, add that dependent. You can always edit the family name. So right now we have it as Mr. Albert E. Borland, but if it becomes the Borland family, you can always edit that. And then memberships is going to be on the left. So when you click on that more, memberships are going to be here. Now, again, remember with the employer, it's automatically going to connect right here. So we have that employee-employer relationship. Should that ever change, it'll update for you again from there. But again, you could add whoever else you're important to. So I do kind of sometimes reference this as, if desired, the ancestry.com of relationships, if that is something that, again, is important to you.
I'm on my 23andMe, I still get emails of like, you have an 8th cousin. I'm like,
cool.
Hey, that's great.
I hope you start coming in
there.
and adding them.
If you want to create those type of linkings, you can. But again, like Catherine, let's talk about this with those relationships. It's always, there's two sides to every relationship. Like in regards to like us, like I would say Catherine Beltran is my best friend. You know, we're besties. We talk every single day. Whereas she would say that I am her workplace proximity associate. Is that
From
correct?
a distance.
From a distance. Okay. Like there's two different sides of the relationship. You can mark that in memberships. I think she's my best friend. She wants me to stay away from her. Definitely.
But that's actually, you bring up a good point here. So yesterday we did have someone who said, hey, why am I not seeing any options here? Make sure you do actually have that other kind of road. I should say you're building a two-way road here. So if I am trying to add in that maybe, hey, Tim Taylor's not only a coworker, but he does view him as that best friend, then you could do it. But again, the link contact is going to refer to here. If Al's considered something else, you could pick something else. So don't feel like you have to pick the same value just because one person views it that way. Now, I'll just go ahead and add that though.
Now, those value drop downs will also change depending on the contact type that you're linking to. So for instance, Al Borland is an individual type contact record. If I were going to link him with a business like Redtail Technology, I don't have the same options as I do for linking him to Tim Taylor, who's another individual. I can't say that Redtail Technology is the parent of Al Borland. I mean, you could technically go and add that to your list, but that's not a thing. But so again, keep in mind, your list will be different depending on the type of contact you're going to be linking from the main contact itself.
Exactly. All right, let's go ahead. Let's come on back though. And we're going to move forward with our next topic, which is again something that we really enforced yesterday with the building, which we're not going to do today. We're not going to build it. I think we did that enough yesterday, but it's to reiterate workflows and the use of them with client onboarding. Now, I did want to take a minor step back though, because with yesterday, it was multi-stepped. There was multiple tasks throughout it. You had to go certain ways. You could hop over it. Workflows don't have to actually be that complicated. And I think that's the biggest kind of drawback sometimes with people not wanting to start with workflows, because they always assume it's this, big monstrous task that we have to set up when it could be very straightforward. So the example I always like to start with is one that's just asking for important information. Hey, I add a new contact in. I want to make sure they have an email, a phone number, a contact address, a date of birth, and that's it. I could make a workflow with it just being more of a checklist, and that's still a workflow. So don't feel like workflows have to be overly complicated. It can be as simple and straightforward as this one. Now, while I was kind of going through here, and this is to kind of represent my chicken scratch, which my handwriting does look a lot like this. So I did stop and wonder though, I always think phone number and email addresses and phone number, and like all of that, date of birth, that's the most important. But I'm also very curious, what are some tasks that your office needs to complete for onboarding a new client? So I am generally asking, put this into your chat. What are some of those tasks that you might feel get forgotten in your office that you wish could be part of a workflow? Or what are some offices that hey, we have to do whenever we add in a new client? So pop that into the chat. I'm very curious because I'm going to show you how simple it can be to add those into our workflow. So don't be shy. There's no wrong answer. It's really how your office handles onboarding. So what are some tasks we have out there?
Well, Catherine, just to be clear, you say there's no wrong answers, but there are in fact 7 wrong answers, and I will list them now. No, I'm kidding. There really are no wrong answers.
Someone just panicked out there. They were typing like, wait, what? So it looks like we've got driver's license. I have heard that one before. Making the client folder, preferred contact method. I haven't heard that one in a long time, actually. Photo ID, professionals. Okay, so I really like this. So I'm actually going to hop into the database here because I have that important information. So I'm going to come up to my name again, or Tucker's name, manage your account, come back to that workflow templates. Now I'm going to hop into this one because again, it's just that checklist. I know I have driver's license in here. I actually even had someone say, hey, upload previous tax returns. So let's see here. What else do we have? We had preferred method, trusted contact. So let me add those in here. So I'll add in another task.
Now, what I love about this workflow is we get the question every once in a while is, when I add a contact record, can I make certain fields required? Like right now, when you add a contact, the only thing required is the name. You can add a contact record with just a name and nothing else. But there's offices who say, I want to make certain things required. Now, there's not a way to make it required, but with workflows, you can actually make a task appear. So anytime I add a contact or change something with this workflow can be automated to start, is going to say, get the driver's license, upload their tax form, anything you want to make required yourself where there's an actual actionable item. Workflow is the best way to do that.
I'm going to add just one more here. Because again, the whole point of this is to show that you can make it super simple like this, and it'll still be just as effective. It's just kind of acting again as that reminder. All right, so it looks like I've got about 12 different tasks here. I can always add in more descriptions. I can always change who it's for again. But really, again, the whole purpose is to help us make this as streamlined as possible when we add in that new contact. Now, I'm going to kind of contradict myself in just a second here and say that, well, if you need it to be more complicated, you can. So instead of just leaving it as that one simple checklist, you can actually still just kind of expand on that checklist. So it's still the same first part, but this time you're involving more of an actual meeting itself, and then the follow up to that meeting. So it's almost taking into comparison what we briefly described as that client review. And again, I know this is a little hard. It's supposed to look like my chicken scratch, which that is hard. So when we come back to workflows, I'm going to come up to the name just as a reminder, manage your account, come on over to workflow templates. And then it's actually towards the bottom here that we had this one. We have it as the onboarding workflow option. This is really what it would look like. So again, it's very similar to what we just did, except for this time we have it as before target date, because maybe I'm gathering this information before they come in, and then actually having the meeting itself with more of that paperwork assembled, going through my proposal, all that good stuff. Hey, sign this, sign your life away, all that good portion. And then following up with it with anything I need to maybe file, maybe I need to scan over for their own copies. So it is, again, just expanding it from there. Now, one thing that I always like to point out too is that should we maybe not have some of these items in here, it doesn't mean you can't add it on the day of. Maybe we needed a copy of something and we obviously are going to get it when we meet with them. Feel free to add more tasks. Again, you're not stuck with what we show here. You're adapting it to your own office.
And it really comes down to like what is most important. Like Catherine's, we've given two examples of the same workflow almost. It's, hey, when I add a contact or I make them a client, I have a list of items I need to get. Is that all I need for my onboarding process? If so, that's great. You can even add a task on there to schedule a meeting. And then the second option is about it being actually off the meeting itself. Right. So if I say, like Catherine said, do I need to get all these tasks done 5 days before the meeting? Or do I need to get them done 5 days after I add them as a contact? It really is dependent on what is your process, and then take that and then choose the workflow that's going to best fit you and build that into the system. Again, this is all based off of the current process you already do. You can do it either way. Exactly. Honestly, I would even say you can split this into two workflows. The first one being just the basic checklist of, hey, I add them into the database as a prospect or make them become a client. I go through, I check off all these items. Then when I reach out to them and schedule the meeting, then I start another workflow to do other kind of prep work. There's so many different options in how you can build this out that it really comes down to why whiteboarding out your process to find out what's most important to you really does matter.
Exactly. Now, I don't know about you, but as much as I love the whole quick add option, there is still a way we can make it easier, which is bringing back that whole concept of automation. And just like there's technically two options with this one, there's really two options with automations here as well. So the first one is more of that status change. So taking it from prospect to a client at that point, that's that transition. This time though, you can have that reaction to link just that basic workflow, that important information. 5 days after they changed into a client, I want to make sure they have that email, phone number, driver's license, photo ID, whatever else I might have just been missing there. But again, you want to make sure you limit it with those conditions. So we do have time. We're going to hop in and actually build this one because yesterday we built it off of a contact added. We didn't build anything with a status changed. So I'm going to hop in. I'm going to have kind of Curtis walk me through it a little bit here. I'm going to get us there first. We'll come up to our name, manage your account, come on down to automation templates, and we're going to build that whole status changed one. So I'm going to come over to add, and while I'm talking, I'll have Curtis just kind of explain everything again.
So in this case, we are building an automation, which is going to bridge the gap between actually changing the status to client and starting our workflow to make sure we have that checklist of items that we need to add to their contact record. So again, you would first create the workflow, then come in here and build an automation similar to what Catherine's doing right now. We're just going to name this prospect to client, straightforward, so we know exactly what the automation is for. And the trigger event, one of the most important things, the contact status change. So that's the actual item or the actual action that you need to do in the red tails. You need to change the status for a contact record in order for it to start off. So if you're not doing a trigger event where you're physically making a change to the database, it's not going to work here. Once we choose on the event, Catherine tabbed over to do this action. You can say, okay, if I change a status, what do I want to happen? We're focusing on workflows right now. So we're going to say link a workflow from an active template, and it gives us a dropdown of all of those templates we have. Again, it needs to be an active template, we're choosing that we want the important information workflow to start.
Now I can go ahead and just go forward with this, right?
You could. Technically, this is an automation. But what this says right now is anytime I change a status, it's going to link the audit that workflow. Now, maybe I only change statuses to client, nothing else. But that means if I change it from client to inactive client, that's also a status change, and that's going to start my important information list again, which isn't correct. So we have the conditions to actually jump in and say, I only need this workflow to start when the status is changed to, and we can put client. So anytime I change the status to active client, then this workflow will go. Conditions technically are optional, but when you don't have conditions, then it's just too general, and it just means every time I change a status, it's going to go, and I don't want that. Only for my clients, because maybe I have a different workflow that's going to start when I change a status to inactive. You can build one for every single status change that you have.
Exactly. Now, if I wanted that one to be actually at the top here, I could technically have come in here. I'm going to edit this actually just to make it even easier on me. Update that list, and it's actually going to go ahead. I'm going to just refresh it to plate save, moves it to the top. Now, this one was maybe an older one we had. Maybe I need to fix that because maybe that's that email notification that I want it to happen. I'm going to make that inactive though to double check it and make sure I don't have maybe multiple things that are happening, or always feel free to do that. But I have now that one is active. And again, that will link my actual important information. So if I come back over to Al, who's currently listed as a prospect. Oh, nope, he's already gotten changed. Looks like someone else went to the database here. So let me.
We can change it back to.
Yeah,
prospect.
we'll kind of reverse it. We're going to go blast in the past for a second, prospect back for a second. Now I'm going to go ahead, just refresh, make sure that held. All right, let me come back in here now. I'm going to change him to an actual active client, update contact details, give it a second, refresh my page. There's that status. More importantly, now at the top, there's that one, which is that important information that we were just talking about. So again, you're not limited with those automations to just when a contact's added for prospecting, but you can also carry that automation through with the client onboarding from when they are now labeled as a client. So this is again with that status changed. Now, we did have that other more, I don't want to call it complicated, but more in-depth workflow that revolved around an activity getting added. So that's another automation that actually could trigger. This one just being an activity added, linking it up to again trigger a different workflow. But again, you want to make sure that you really use that typing category. So let's come on back. I want to say we have this one built, so we'll just kind of go through it. We just double check, and if not, we'll build it from scratch. But let's see. I believe this is the one I'm looking for.
Yes.
You got it. Yep, this is the one.
So real fast, Catherine, we had a question come in and I wanted to answer this live. Is in a workflow, can you have one workflow trigger another workflow to start? And the answer is no, but it doesn't mean you can't have things still automatically happen. You want to think about the trigger event, so in the case of in workflow example 1, where it's just a checklist of information, if I say, hey, as soon as this is done, I want my next onboarding workflow that's based around their meeting to start. Well, in that case, I would add a task to workflow 1 that says schedule meeting. And it's the addition of an activity that can actually start the next workflow. So keep in mind, we don't necessarily want to say, hey, this workflow will start the next workflow. It's this workflow ends, and one of the actions that it tells me to do, like adding an activity, is what's going to start the next workflow. So we always want to take a step back when we want workflows to link to each other and think about what are we actually doing or changing in the database that can help me push it forward.
There we go. So I just added it. Again, as simple as that, you schedule it if, again, that's something you'd want. Now, coming back through this one, though, this is actually tying exactly what Curtis is talking about with that activity getting added. Now, that is one thing I really want to stress. I'm emphasizing that word added here, because if you change it, it will not trigger that workflow. If you've updated it and you realized, whoops, I picked the wrong type, it will not trigger that workflow. So it's going off of you originally adding in that actual activity. So once that activity is added, it's going to link that workflow. So again, very similar to the last one, This time, however, we've just made it extremely specific by saying that if that activity type is equal to appointment, and then if that category is equal to onboarding meeting, that's when we want it to apply. So with this one, we again have two conditions that must be met. That's something we chose to do. We are not required to have a multifaceted option here. You could just have maybe the type if you prefer, but this is actually what we would want to trigger. Now,
real fast on that same topic, Catherine, keep in mind our activity types and our activity categories are most likely different than what you have in your database because they are customizable fields. If you happen to have onboarding meeting as a type, definitely add that as your condition. Where we have client review and client meeting in there, but we don't have onboarding meeting. We have that as a category. It all comes down to, again, how you've decided to organize your activities. And that's what's most important here is even in this case, if the category is onboarding meeting, that can be the only option. You know, we can actually just say, hey, it's just one level of activity category is equal to onboarding. It doesn't matter what the activity type is. I'm just more concerned about the category. Personally, I would say use as little conditions as possible. Minimum of one. You know, you would need to at least have one condition, but if the least you can use, the better it is for consistency. Because if Catherine were to add this as a task with the category of onboarding meeting, how it currently exists will not start the automation because the task, not an appointment. So if we remove that layer of, hey, it's needed to be the type, and we're only concerned about the category, it's going to be easier because we know that, hey, the category was correct. We don't have to worry about the type if we accidentally chose the wrong one.
now there is one tool though. So to avoid maybe those accidentals, because I get it, we're human. We're bound to just move too quickly sometimes and go, insert choice words here, because it's always going to be when it's the worst day for it to happen. But if I did exactly what Curtis is saying here, where I only picked onboarding meeting, I think everything's going rainbow and sunshines. I attach it to Al, I'm going through it. Yay, onboarding meeting, filling it in, picked the date and time, click create activity. This automation will not work because again, that type has not been chosen. However, I do have probably my absolute favorite thing in the entire system, which is, I almost feel like I need a drum roll here, activity templates. Activity templates are seriously one of my favorite things because it simplifies a lot of what we're looking for. I have so many offices describing exactly what Curtis is saying, where one person in our office always fails to pick the right type. So we're never getting those workflow launches. And usually they'll throw the person's name under the bus. Now, I don't want to pick on any offices in particular, but an activity template can ensure that your type and your category, if both of them are listed in that automation, are in fact picked. So again, the whole purpose of this activity template, you pick that template, it's to pre-fill as much of this as possible. So coming back over into the database, if I have that appointment and onboarding in here, I can come back to the name, back to manage your account. Activity templates are right up here. And I will assure you, these are far easier to build than workflows. You can click on new and you're going to pick exactly what you want to be chosen every time you use this template. So again, I'll go for it. I'm sorry.
Oh, I absolutely love activity templates because again, it's for consistency. Every time I create an onboarding meeting, I'm selecting the onboarding template to pre-fill out the things, because then you can say, hey, we need to make sure that this is the correct type and category, and the template's going to fill that out for us. So if you tell everyone in your office, use these templates to make sure that we are going to be consistent with everything. And then the dominoes that you've set up. And that's what I like to describe this as, is the automation, the workflow, the tasks, everything is just a bunch of dominoes set up. And as you knock over the first domino, they're going to go over exactly how you want. That's what the templates are ensuring, that you are correctly and accurately knocking over the first domino.
Exactly. So let's go ahead. And let's see, let me see if I can get someone else here. Actually not, let me just do a quick little search. Let's kind of enforce that search really fast. Let me find another prospect.
Now, real fast, actually, because I saw this question come up.
Yeah, go for it.
Someone said, I wish an automation could be triggered when you are adding a follow-up activity from a note. And it definitely can. Because when you actually check when you are making a note and check create follow-up activity, you can actually choose a template that activity is going to be created with. And if that template has the activity type and activity category selected for something that will start your automation, then that's exactly what it's going to do. So you can definitely use the follow-up activity as the trigger activity for your automation to start your workflow.
Sorry, it's like, let me get there really fast. So I found another prospect in ours. And so they, again, recently, we're going to make them a client. Now I know I have another one triggering, which might, again, just be that simple, important information. Let me switch them. I'm going to just make a single A for the moment. But this time I've gone ahead and I've scheduled that activity. So I'm going to come over to this add activity or the plus sign at the top, either or. It's not to say one's better than the other. But I'm going to go ahead and pick that onboarding meeting template. Again, it pre-filled my subject, my type, my category, my attendees even. So now all I'm doing, changing the date. I'm going to say she's coming in earlier, 10 a.m. time. I'm going to create my activity. There's that meeting. Went ahead, switch start status. So we actually have both of those triggered now. There's that important information and there's my onboarding.
Now,
So go for it.
Oh, Catherine, go into that meeting too. Like go back to the main contact and click on the meeting you just created. Like when you open up the meeting, up at the top in the yellow, you'll see it's actually linked to the workflow. The automation will actually put this link inside the activity so you know exactly what workflow it's tied to. And I love that aspect of it as well.
I'm actually glad you brought that up because this is another thing I love with automations, with activities specifically, is that if you come across someone, because there's always at least one person that we have who notoriously reschedules and just reschedules and keeps rescheduling on you. And if you didn't have that automation linking up, you'd have to change that target date in two different spots. One would actually be within the activity. If it's again not having that automation to trigger this workflow, I'd have to also come in here and change the target date. But if Tina immediately calls me back right after and goes, I'm so sorry, I forgot I'm going to be unavailable that day. Can I come in on Thursday instead? I just changed the 8th on this activity, save my activity. Now I had this one open, so I'm going to just refresh really fast, but it changed the 8th automatically for me. So I love linking an activity or creating an activity template that ensures my automation is going to work to link my workflow. It just takes all that guesswork out. Like Curtis was saying earlier, you're not having to sit there and go, is this going to work? Am I going to have to make sure it's automatically working every time? You know, you're taking out any of those questions that we might be putting on our coworkers. So really, you are not limited, I should say. You're not limited when it comes to those activity templates. You're not limited really when it comes to automations and workflows, but activity is really that appointment. Workflow is that process that you're going through it and making sure that, hey, we prepped, we did the meeting, we did a follow-up. But again, that appointment is the activity. I know I saw that somewhere in the chat, I think. So again, the big thing is appointment, activity, workflow, the whole process around it.
Now, Catherine, I want to show off the how to handle page on this, just because we've been showing two sides to like different processes. Like, hey, you can do it this way, or you can do it this way, and we've been going back and forth. And personally, I understand like that's a lot of information showing me two different sides to how it can be done. Just so, we pointed this out yesterday, but if you go to the question mark in the top right, then go to the Redtail help desk. It'll open up. And so what I suggest is it's documentation. So it's not a video. We go to where it says Redtail CRM. That's going to give us a lot of documentation information. When you scroll down, there's that section called how to handle. When you open that up, this is all of Redtail's best practices. And go ahead and click on the onboarding one, Catherine, where it says client onboarding. And I just want to show, if you want to know what the steps are, step by step, for what we just did, it's all here. We talk about the status and category. We talk about creating the activity. Even scrolling down here, it's going to show you the workflow and the automation about how those go together. So again, the information is all there. If you want to see what are the step-by-step instructions without having to, listen to Curtis's horrible jokes in the video again, it's definitely here where you can definitely go look at it.
And then similarly, just because again, we reference it so much, besides just the how to handles, we've referenced 3 templates here alone: the activity templates, the automation templates, and the workflow templates. And if you're sitting there going, I don't even know where to begin, you've got that kind of glazed over, oh, this is a lot. there's sample templates on here as well. So it's also under that how to handle. I just do a quick search because it's always the first one that pops open. But this might be also a really good source to just start and get some ideas and then use that whiteboard you might have purchased, or maybe cave and go into the post-it notes, whatever works best for you. But that way you can start to have that process. Again, once you have that process, that's when consistency, organization, and just an all-around easier time will be used within the CRM.
And
Uh,
sorry,
No, go
don't
for it.
ever feel like you have to use every single template, every
Right.
single option of templates we have. I see people get buried in so much information and lost, a little bit because they're trying to use every single template that's available. It is possible to use them. We show a world where we are using all of them, but keep in mind, not every office has a process to where it's going to work out in that way. And so add them little by little, saying, okay, hey, let's take on activity and note templates right now. Let's get the consistency going there. Then let's throw in workflows and then maybe automations.
You got it.
Don't ever feel like you have to do all of them at the same time.
Yeah, I'm really glad. So that whole digestible chunks, I know it's a weird kind of awkward phrase to really absorb, but that is really what we're saying is work at the pace that works best for you to develop that way to make it easier for you. So that actually does bring us up to, if we can believe it already, another break time. So we've actually been timing it almost perfectly today. I'm really impressed with us.
I don't know how that's happening.
I don't either. It's really weird for us. So we're going to bring Austin back. We're going to, again, kind of just enjoy this next 10 minutes. So we'll get at the top of the hour, so 11 our time, just add it to your 1 hour of there. But 10 minutes from now, we'll begin our last course of today. We'll continue on with our randomness during the break. Do not feel like you have to listen in. You can use this time to use the restroom, grab some water, whatever you need. But again, we're just going to kind of jibber jabber for the next 10 minutes.
Jibber jabber.
Jibber jabber.
I'm gonna step away for a moment. I'll see you guys in a second.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Boy, Curtis, how does that feel?
Right?
It feels like what I would say to her if she said that. So
I know.
It's correct.
it's my own medicine against me is what's happening.
I've been around him too much.
Don't let him rub off on you.
But only for Curtis. I wouldn't do that to Austin.
Man.
Oh.
Yeah. Good opportunity for everybody to take a break.
So, only because
That's
I
right.
didn't ask it yesterday. Oh, wait, no, Austin, were you going to ask something?
Oh, I was just going to give you guys an update on our conversation yesterday. So remember, gosh, I still don't know how to say it. McMinions?
I couldn't
Uh,
spell espresso, so I'm not judging. I'm in no
So,
position.
I looked it up and I thought, okay, it's probably like a restaurant or something like that. No,
Okay.
This place is to the nines. Like it is it's so Oregon, really. It's like the Pacific Northwest into like one spot. So it's, they basically took like an old Catholic school and they converted it into like a hotel, a couple restaurants, and like this really like cool patio area. And I was just like perusing on their website and they said that they have like a kind of like a beer fest going on. So they're doing $25. You get to try 10 different beers and ciders. They're going to do live folk music and you get like your own little fire pit for your party. It's all socially distanced. I was like, this
for
is
$25?
the ultimate. Yeah. I was like, this is the ultimate Oregon experience right here.
Wait, where is this at?
Cool.
The McMinions that we were talking about
The one we
yesterday. I
couldn't
think
say yesterday.
Where is that located? Is
Wasn't
that
it Bend?
It's in
in
Bend.
Bend. Oh, okay.
So I also looked at, they have like 30 odd locations and they're all like these like old like 50 diners that they've converted. They have one that's like a movie theater that's also like a pub at the same, they're all over the Pacific Northwest and I'm really excited to visit them.
I'm
I
not
don't
gonna lie, I
rem-
expected Rick's head to pop up with that whole movie theater one.
I know that one. I know Bend, Oregon very well.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. That's
He just fancied us right there. He was
Oh.
like,
it's like
I'm
I
well
know.
aware.
I'm aware.
Yeah, I saw the passport on there too. So like, it's kind of like a thing that you can do where you can purchase like a passport and then you go to the different locations, you get your passport stamped and then you get like free gear from them. Well, I guess you pay for the passport, but you get gear from them from completing your passport. It's like a whole like game.
I do the same thing, but with the rooms in my own house. So it's like, go to the kitchen, get a stamp. Yes.
Please tell me they're just a bunch of red tail stickers like through the years.
It definitely is. Get out of bed today, get a stamp.
It's like one's hanging in every doorway.
Yeah. I reward myself for moving and doing more than sitting in a chair.
God, that's great.
So I got to tell you guys, at this location, I'm kind of want to know from like, I see Liz has been there. Right, Liz used to work there actually. That's pretty cool. But I guess at the Bend location, there's this thing called the broom closet, and
What?
it's like Rick's shaking his head. I don't know if he's been there, but I guess it's like this room full of abstract brooms. Is kind of the best of what I could gather from it from the website. But
Can you
looks
define
like,
an abstract broom, please?
it's like, so like, you have like your traditional like straw broom, right? But like the handle's all like wiggly and like there's only like half of the straw, like, and it goes at like an angle, like it's
Like Harry Potter brooms.
yeah.
Huh.
Bend, Oregon is literally the kind of place where you could say, I saw fill in the blank at Bend, Oregon, and quite literally nothing that you can make up would be weird or like surprising.
I think my uncle actually lives in Bend. I'm not positive. I'm very unclear about it, but like he might have property in Bend, but like he goes there a lot. I don't know.
I've never been, and I'm real excited to visit because it sounds
Curtis.
like such an interesting place.
Not to interrupt the Bend conversation, but Curtis, I'll let you answer the one question is the one that you answered live, you tagged live and answered it live. So I'll let you, when you get the chance, obviously, to type out the answer to that initial question.
Wait, I marked something to answer live. What are you at?
Yeah,
What are you-
it was about the workflows and where is it here? I think it was the automation being triggered when you're adding a follow-up activity. I think was the answer that you gave. Actually, you know what? Now that I look up the answer, I can write it out. Keep talking.
Oh, because I was like, I thought we answered that, so it wasn't.
I just don't think we typed it out, so I'll type it out.
Oh, okay.
I think that's the one. Because it's listed as anonymous attendee. So to the anonymous attendee, if that is the question that you're referring to, I'm going to type out the answer. If you're thinking of another one, just re-ask it, and then I'll do my best to answer it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, for those who send anonymous, we don't know where your other questions came from since it all says anonymous, unfortunately. So if you are choosing to use anonymous, which is definitely fine, make sure that you reference what you were referencing before more directly, just so we can link them together. A little easier for us. I was honestly like, the people don't know who are watching, but I very much am like, when I go off camera, I'm switching back to like my hermit mode. I actually have it ready to go. Like as soon as like I'm off camera, it's very much back to this.
So we should clarify. Yesterday, I was really trying to get Curtis to start that way, but without the hat, because he looked straight up like he was about to just philosophical wizard us here on workflows. And I was like, this is taking your name to the epitome.
This is how I join most team meetings, is I'm very much just like trying to avoid the rest of the world. But it's like, it's always there. I'm ready. Like, and I'm ready to like, at any time I can present. I got my presenting hat on.
So we
we almost got inspired to do an old English RTU theme.
I'm down. Let's make it all about comfort and just staying warm.
I don't think of comfort with Renaissance, I've got to be honest.
I can bust out my old Renaissance fair costume from 15 years ago.
If we do a Renaissance theme, I'm going to be the person who dressed like I'm from Star Trek, and I'm like going into a Renaissance world. I'm definitely going to be that person.
Would anybody like to guess what I worked the Arizona Renaissance Festival for 2 seasons. Can anybody guess? What?
Were you the jester?
I was not the jester. I was in the front court ticket area. So we basically were the ticket takers, but we also got to, when we weren't taking tickets, we would get to just roam that area and fill that area with like characters and stuff. So can anybody guess in the chat? Actually, not guess, in the chat and here amongst the three of you, I want you to see if you can figure out what my Renaissance Festival name was. It was a version of my real name.
Renaissance Ricky.
No, it was not Renaissance. I need you to think a little bit. It didn't reference the Renaissance fair. You had to be like a real person.
You said for us to interpret it. You got to be
Hey,
more clear with
You
that.
go by Ricky Redtail.
Devil?
Ricky Redtail. I like someone put the devil. Yes.
The devil.
That's
Sir Richard of Camel.
We have 2 minutes left in this break. You can't throw something like that out.
Richard the Red Tail. I like that one, Susan.
Oh, that's not bad. It's actually not Red Tail related. Red Tail was only, I think, 3 years old at the time. I didn't even know Red Tail existed. But so
Sorry,
Richard is correct, and the is correct.
The Richard.
So
Is it
Richard the no, it was Richard the blank.
Oh,
Renaissance. No.
I wonder if I can find a picture.
Richard the Great, Lynn guests.
That's
Richard
close.
the Great?
It's
No.
close. It was not great.
Richard the
Regal?
Richard the Single.
A single? I don't know if I'll be able to find a picture in time for the break.
we have Richard
the
Canada
Lonely.
Goose.
Richard the Canada Goose. You
Is
know,
it Richard the Lonely?
this is one of my lonely. I had friends back then. This is why I love our users. They're on our level. You guys are on our level, and I appreciate that. Lionhearted is very good. I'm gonna have to see if I can find a picture. Because it's the end of break time, it was Richard the Hungry. And instead of swords, I had wooden utensils hanging from my belt, and I had a giant spoon and a giant fork that I had sheathed in like a back sheath. So it was Richard the Hungry.
The Hungry?
The
You
Hungry.
expected us to guess that?
The Hungry. We had magnificent. The butcher was actually really close, Sally. That's not that far off. So people got close.
Maybe
But-
at the next break, we can have Rick tell us about his other costume that he made.
He
I got
has a lot of costumes. That doesn't narrow it down.
The Halloween one that was not HR
That
approved.
still doesn't narrow
Don't
it
bring a
down.
Yeah. No.
All right. Well, Rick,
I
we should
will-
probably get off.
If you stick around to the very end, I will find a picture of Richard the Hungry for when we wrap this thing up. But for now, I go bye-bye.
Yep. We will we'll give it back to Austin. Curtis, I will see you all at the next
Bye, Catherine.
the wrap up.
Hi, Catherine.
All right, Curtis, let's jump to this. We got our final and third section of today. We're talking about client management. So you guys have kind of picked up on the theme by now. We're kind of working our way through the client life cycle. So we started this morning with sales cycle, right? That first hello to the yes, I want to be a client. Then we tackled onboarding. Yes, I want to be a client to now I actually am a client. And now Curtis and I are going to tell you about that ongoing client management. They're already a client. How do we keep them happy? How do we keep them involved? How do we continue to provide our services with them? So this is, yeah.
We
go
don't
ahead.
want things to stop happening with them, right? Like
Right.
they become a client, now what?
Right.
But there's always a continuous cycle. Like what are they talking about? Like in Game of Thrones, like the wheel. Like there should be a wheel, even though like that whole show was like, we need to break the wheel. This should be a wheel that's continuously going. Like once they're a client, are they on it? Are they rotating through? Are we keeping them going?
Yeah. So Curtis, one of the most popular wheels that I've seen with offices I work with is this thing called a client review, right? It's some kind of annual, semi-annual, maybe even quarterly thing where we sit down with the client, we review their finances, we ask them questions, and they ask us questions about kind of what does their financial future entail. And so let's start with that. Let's talk about the client review process in Redtail and how we can kind of manage that wheel, if you will. So first thing we got to do is just kind of set the expectation of what we mean when we say the client review process in Redtail. So the client review process in Redtail by no means replaces you, the scheduler, right? We still want to maintain that personal touch. We still want to have that schedule in their position to make sure that the scheduled client reviews are getting accomplished. But what Redtail provides is three things. It lets you know who needs to be scheduled for a review. It lets you know who has a review scheduled and who has completed a review.
Love that. Now, also keep in mind, like we've been talking about for the past 2 days, like categorizing. And so how Austin sort of said is like they can be on all different schedules. Each client can be on their own schedule. And if you want to use the category and say that if I label them as a AAA, I'm going to make sure that I'm reminded to reach out every 3 months. If they're a double A, I'm going to go into their record and say they're coming every 6 months. Again, this is all up to you to determine how often you want to be reaching out to schedule a meeting.
Yeah.
I think we really need to push and say the reminder is not about the actual scheduling. It's the reminder to schedule something. It's not when actually something is going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's actually probably great material that we could put on our style guide, like we talked about yesterday. And that actually serves as a great transition. So I kind of want to just tackle what's the difference between a reminder versus an activity. So Curtis, can you tell us about reminders?
Yes, reminders are, reoccurring in themselves, where it's like, hey, there's a birthday reminder. Everybody has a birthday once a year. It is something that is not actually, it's not, I don't know if the word is tangible, but it's not actually like it needs to be done on this day. It's saying, hey, we need to reach out to do something to get something scheduled. It's if their birthday's coming up, are we going to send them a birthday card? Are we going to give them a phone call? Like, that's the thing that we're doing once we see they have a birthday coming up. The same thing sort of happens with client reviews. So it's, again, it is just sort of this date that can repeat and push forward every year, every 3 months, however you want it to push forward. But keep in mind, there is no historical information with the reminders. So I can't go back and see how many times was I reminded for this client. It's always about what is the next thing in line. So I always like to tell people, when you're dealing with reminders, the goal is to be proactive. You're always looking ahead at the reminders to make sure that you get that done. If their client review comes up, I need to reach out and schedule to get them at an actual meeting where I'll have historical information. Now, there's also not going to be any notification emails that come through. And I know that sounds a little terrifying, but I guarantee it's not. It's okay to not have the actual email notification, because that's what the CRM is for. The CRM is telling you all these different little things that you need to remember, but you need to go in and look for them itself. It organizes those reminders instead of just sending emails.
So on the other side of the coin, we have activities, and that's actually where we have more of a concrete item of that particular client review. It goes on our calendar, right? It can be completed. We can add notes to it. We can add an agenda to it. We do have those email notification options if we need for when that item is created. And so these reminders and activities kind of work hand in hand in the client review process. To kind of illustrate this, I want to use an example of kind of construction oriented. Think about when you hang a picture frame on the wall, right? The first thing you have to do is you have to get a general idea of, like, where do I want that picture to frame? You might get out your leveling tool and go up to the wall and maybe take out a pencil and say, this probably looks about where I would want to go ahead and hang that picture. And then once we have that determination, we can use that hammer and nail to actually put it into place. It's the same thing with client reviews. We have the reminder that's kind of the estimate, right? We'd like to have it somewhere in this range here. And then the activity is what really drives the nail home and actually makes it into a client review.
I absolutely love that example, because it really is that. It's, hey, like, we can put like that, hey, the pictures need to be on this line. But once I get to that picture and realize that, hey, this frame is a little bigger than the others, or it's smaller than the others, I need to adjust that specific one, or maybe like where it hangs. Like, there's so many variables, but at least the line is there to say it should be around this angle.
Mm-hmm.
There is a big difference. If Austin and I were both going to go hang up a bunch of picture frames and he got a level and I didn't, I was just going through, I guarantee his pictures are going to look nicer, more organized, because he planned out where they were going to go. Whereas if I'm just jumping in and adding in nails on the wall to hang them up, it could look a mess. Mm-hmm. Now we can argue that, hey, it's an eclectic decorating style. No. Like, no, hey, we're eclectic with our with our scheduling. Uh-huh. The reminder is just saying, get it close to here. Then the nail is where it actually is.
Okay,
it sort of hits that nail on the head. But
right. There you go. So let's talk about setting the reminder. How do we actually put that reminder onto a contact record? So I'm going to slide on over here to Redtail CRM, and we've been working with Al today, onboarding him as a new client. So I'm just going to go to the search options here, type in his name, and we'll go ahead and open up his contact record. Now we see here on the contact details section that he is now an active client. And so we're going to head over to the Know Your Client tab here on the left-hand side to go ahead and put that reminder in place. Now, this could be something that you take care of as part of your onboarding process as well. We talked about that onboarding workflow. This could definitely be something that gets set up ahead of time, so that way you have that sequence in place. But to set it, what we're going to do is we're going to find the client review reminder here, and we're going to choose Edit. So then it's going to ask us, what was the first review date? Now, if we know the very first review date for this person, you can more than likely go ahead and put that in there. Now, I like to just say this is the first review date in which we're setting up the sequence for. So that might be today. That might have been a month ago when we first onboarded them as a client, right? We're just trying to basically set ourselves a starting point so we can set that recurring pattern.
And that's exactly the word I would use, like starting point. This is the starting point for the reminder. So even if it wasn't their actual first review date, this is what we want the frequency to be based off of. If we're choosing like, hey, it was their first review date was in January, but I just saw them, in February, and I'm basing it still off January, I can be off a little bit, so it really comes down to, do I want to see them every 3 months starting in January? Then yes, I'm going to put that and choose a repeat of 3 months. But keep in mind, you are not required to put the actual first review date because it might not line up with the current repeating process that they're currently going through. Is that clear, Austin? I feel like I might have like.
I'm tracking with you.
All right, perfect.
All right, so
I feel like I restate things too many times to where it gets a little confusing.
All good. All right. So now that we have our first date in place, now we're going to go ahead and set up the recurrence pattern. So Redtail has just a couple of default options that we can choose from here. So for example, if we do our reviews annually, I could just go ahead and choose the annual option and just be done with it. Now, for the most part, you're probably going to want to set up something more specific. So we also have this custom option as well, in case any of these options don't exactly work for what you're looking for. So for example here, if I wanted to set up a semi-annual review for Al, I might choose every 6 months and choose the day of the month or the fourth Thursday of the month, because the 25th is the fourth Thursday of the month, to go ahead and repeat that on.
Now, I like that option because it gives you, okay, do I want it to fall on the fourth Thursday or on the 25th of the month? The reason that we give those options is, hey, like it could just always be the 25th, but if I don't want the reminder to fall on a weekend, I can say the monthly on the fourth Thursday. But in all honesty, and this is just my opinion, to me, a reminder, I don't care if it falls on a Saturday or Sunday, because I'm going to be proactive. I'm still going to look ahead. And if the reminder happens to be on a Sunday, it just means I'm going to try and schedule them on Monday. And so in regards to reminders, that doesn't bother me when it falls on a weekend. But if you really prefer, I don't want a reminder to be on a weekend, then you can definitely use this option.
Yeah. Another strategy would be to use the week feature as well. So when we go here and we change this to weeks, you notice that it allows for us to pick a specific day of the week that we want that review to fall under. So for example, for semi-annual, I would choose 26 weeks. For a quarterly review, I might choose 12 weeks. And then I can choose specifically, I want to be client review reminded on Mondays. Mondays
of every 12 weeks. Definitely. Like, I mean, even you can, if you still want it to be once a year, you can put every 52 weeks on the Monday, it's up to you. But again, this is the frequency of how often you're going to be reminded to reach out to them to schedule their appointment. This is still just the reminder aspect. We're not putting anything in stone yet.
So Curtis, I'm actually going to set Al here for every month. And the reason why is just because when we first onboard a new client, we want to make sure that we're laying down some of those foundational pieces. So I want to meet with them once a month until we get some, financial plans in place and so forth. And then eventually we'll go ahead and expand them out. So I'm going to set Al here for just 1 month out. And that's going to set me for the reminder for the next fourth Thursday of April, which happens to be April 22nd. All right. So again, there's that pro tip. Consider adding this as part of your client your client onboarding process. So that way it's set and you can make sure that you're being reminded. We don't have to go in after the fact and add it.
Oh, absolutely. And again, that's just like Catherine showed her, in the presentation before. You can go in and add a task to your workflow process to say, add this in.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now that we have our reminders set up in the database, now we're actually going to go and find them. And like Curtis says, you want to be proactive about these. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a search for the client reviews coming up next month. So we're towards the end of March. So it's time to get ready for the client reviews for April. And so let's use the advanced search tool in Redtail to find who's coming up due. So we'll slide over here and we're going to go to the contacts tab here on the left. We're going to choose advanced search. And then the advanced search that you're going to want to use is type is equal to know your client. The field is going to be next review month. The operand will be equal to, and then I will choose the next month. So know your client, next review month equal to, and then the next month in this case, which is April.
Now, real fast, on top of this, I would say let's add one more layer. Because actually, at the very first one, you'll see there's a contact in there who's a center of influence. He's not an active client. He's a center of influence. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I have a status of deceased and I don't remove the reminder. You can narrow it down to also just my active clients.
Yeah.
So you have the ability to narrow it down as far as you want.
So we'll choose the and button to add another layer of criteria. The type in this case will be contact, status, equal to active client. And so when I click this run button, we should see Bucky disappear. And now we're just down to 5. Because again, Bucky's status was center of influence, not active client. So he's now been excluded from this list.
Now, Austin, this me and you actually talked yesterday where we did in cleaning up chaos, where there are 2 different ways to go about making changes. And really and it was based off of a search. I really see there's 2 different ways that you can use this page to actually schedule those appointments.
Yeah.
So in the sense of where I think it was your suggestion of clicking on the first one. And then if you click on that very first contact, because we ran a search, we can then tab over to the next contact. But what's great about this, we open up their page and we can see, oh, hey, we need to schedule them as close to that review date. It's the end of March. I want to schedule you as close to April 14th as I can. Yeah. And then from there, if you run it off of a search, then you can hit next and go down and just based off of that review date and add the activity from the contact record.
Yeah, definitely. Now, there's also a way to do this in bulk as well, Curtis. And you and I actually, we kind of split paths here as far as how we like to do it. So I'm going to show kind of my method, and I'll give you guys a hint. It's from one of my favorite tools from this morning, tag groups, and using a tag group, kind of how we used prospects earlier to go ahead and reach out and schedule those people. So I'm going to show my method, and then we'll go ahead and show your method. And Curtis, I think we just learned a valuable lesson here as far as our searches go. It's always smart to hit this save button when you're running these types of searches. So that way, in case you got to click away, you can come back to it easily. And so if we click this save button here, I'm just going to create a quick list for myself, and I'm going to call this client reviews. And the reason I'm not calling this April client reviews is because I can actually use the same search every month and just adjust this month here to reflect whichever month is the preceding month. So again, next month, let's say we're in the middle of April now, I can go over to this little guy up here, choose my quick lists, open up my client reviews quick list, and with little additional effort, I can just go ahead and change this from April to May. And there we go. We got our clients ready to go for May. So always smart when doing searches to save the list, just in case you have to click away, just like I just did there. And you can come back to it quickly. So let's start with my method here. So again, what I like to do is go ahead and select the options here. And I'm going to choose contact options, bulk actions, and I'm going to create a tag group for these contacts. So what I'll do here is I'll say client reviews to be scheduled. And then I'll go ahead and put in the time. So April 2021. and go ahead and create that tag group. And so now when I have some time available in my day and it's time to schedule those client reviews, I can just go ahead and open up that tag group and find those contacts. So here's my tag groups. We're going to find our client reviews to be scheduled for April 21. And then just like I did with prospects, I'm going to take out my phone, right? I'm going to give them a call by hovering over their information. I could also use the action icon to send them an email. Maybe I include, some times that I'm available, or you can even use a scheduling software in this case and embed a link into that email. But then once I go ahead and book that person for their client review, I'm going to use this action arrow here to make an activity for them for their client review. So let's just say hypothetically, I called Al. He says he's available on April 15th. And so I can go ahead and put in the information. Now, we learned in the last session that we have this really cool tool called activity templates that can speed up this process. So here I have a template for client review. I'm going to apply that. And then all I need to do is just adjust the date and time. So we're going to meet on April 15th at 1 o'clock, and we can go ahead and schedule that review. Now, once that activity is scheduled, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Al and I'm going to take him off of that tag group because he no longer needs to be scheduled, right? He's already scheduled. And so I'll open up the contact record here. I'll come on down to client reviews to be scheduled, and I'll remove that tag. So that way I can just focus on those other 4 contacts that I need to get scheduled for the following month. So that's my method, Curtis. Now you have a different method. So let's go back to that quick list here. And why don't you tell us how you like to tackle scheduling those client reviews?
Definitely. So it's a similar concept, but it's just using different tools in the system.
Mm-hmm.
The concept itself is I need to know based off of that review reminder, which there's no like physical thing in the system. It's just saying they need to be scheduled around this time. I need to take that and make it actionable in some way. Whereas in your case, you're adding them to a tag group. And then once they're scheduled, you're removing them from a tag group. The most important thing there is the action of removing them from a tag group is implied that they have been scheduled for their review. In my case, I like to really rely heavily on, did I call them to schedule or did I not? Like, to me, like a tag group is like, that's great, but I really need to know, when do I need a specific date? The tag group is just saying, I need to get these done. There's no actual due dates for it. I want an actual due date of when I need to schedule them. So in that case, very similar to how Austin went and took all these contacts where you select all, go to contact options on the right-hand side, and then bulk actions. I'm not going to do a tag group. I'm going to click add activity. So when you click add activity from this page, it will create an individual activity for each selected contact. In this case, I'm just going to name the subject call to schedule client review. And so at this point, I'm going to actually even just make it an all-day event because I don't know I'm not going to say I'm specifically calling them at a certain time. And I'm just going to keep it assigned to today. Like, hey, starting today, I want to start making these phone calls. So that's the day I'm doing it. And we'll make it as a task. That's definitely fine. And let's actually do it about client review notes because we want it to be connected there. But this is not the client review. So that's why my activity type is not client review. This is a task. This is an item that needs to get done. As soon as we create that activity, instead of having to go and remove them from a tag group, which again is very similar, let's just go to the Today page now. When you open up the Today page, I'm going to see every single one of those activities right there, all assigned to the different people. So at this point, I can open up the first activity. I can reach out to the contact. I can click on their name and go to the contact. Once I'm in there, I can then actually add, perfect. Thank you. You can see their information from here. Then there's also 2 different thoughts. I could, in a way, just change the date and time of this actual activity and update to their actual client review meeting. Or if I want to make sure that my new client review meeting gets triggered by the automation like we showed off, then I would create a brand new activity and I would complete the current open one. So personally, again, I would complete this activity that's currently open because, hey, the activity is call to schedule the client review. If I'd called to schedule it, I'm completing that and doing the next item. So there's a lot of different ways that you can decide that you want to schedule your client reviews, But the most important thing I can say is that what both of these ways share is that we're being proactive. We are looking ahead at everybody who needs to be scheduled for April and finding a way to make sure that we schedule them or not. That is the most important part of this. I've seen offices who use the client reviews, and technically they wait till it shows on, today's reviews. If I'm trying to schedule someone and their reminder says they're supposed to be having a meeting today, but I'm only waiting till today to reach out to schedule it, I'm already behind in the process. So that's why it's so important to be ahead.
Yeah. So if you're tracking with me there, what I did is I went to Andy's record, I added in a client review appointment. And then once I reviewed that, I went ahead and completed that call to schedule, since we already are scheduled in that case. So 2 different ways, right? You can kind of play around with both, see what's going to work best for you in your process. But either way, again, the take home is to be proactive. All right. So yes, so we covered this here, scheduling the client review. Curtis mentioned that when we're scheduling lots of reviews using automations, it's important to use those templates and to fill out that information, so that way we get that information tracked on. So now we have our client review scheduled. What should we do once we're finished with it? So if we go back here to Redtail, let's just pretend for a second here that it is April 14th. We've just had our review with Andy. Curtis, what do we do next?
What do we do? We got to complete that. We gotta notate what actually happened. So because we had it scheduled, we can open up the activity. Now, because we're in the activity and that linked the actual workflow up at top, which you can see in yellow there, we can actually add that information. But what's most important in this case, again, we have done the client review, is I need to notate what happened. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of people will add notes into the description section of an activity. I'm never going to say that's wrong, but it's not the intended use of description. Description should be like how we have the agenda for the meeting, what needs to take place during the meeting. So this is essentially the prep for the activity. Whereas anything that happened afterwards, I highly suggest you use the linked notes on the right-hand side. So when we use linked notes, it's going to make a unique time and date stamp for a note, and we can even categorize that note. So this, again, the activity is open. We're going to make a note inside the linked notes and then complete the full activity to say that we are done. Everything at this point for this client review has been done, and we can actually report on it based off of a note as well.
Yeah, so entering those link notes is going to timestamp it right then and there. If we put it here in the description, it's not going to actually time and date stamp that note until we actually complete the activity. So it is recommended, while it's not wrong to put it in your description, it is recommended that you add it to that link notes.
I even talk to a lot of offices who say, hey, like in the description, we want a way for a keyboard shortcut to put our initials and date and timestamp in there. Like, hey, can we have that? Technically, that's what the linked notes do automatically. So it actually puts a time and date stamp and who made the linked note in there. And you can make as many linked notes into an activity as you want. And it's going to actually put them in order. And I can report on those again individually. So even if I did just reach out and called and left a message, I can add a linked note to that activity. And it's going to say exactly when I did that.
Yep, so it's timestamping it each time I enter that note. And then once we're finished, we'll go ahead and hit the save and complete option, and that's going to close down that client review. Now, in this case, we're a little bit ahead of the game. So that client review reminder is still going to show as April 14th until, of course, we get to April 14th, in which case it's going to roll over to the next occurrence. Yep. So important to know that we don't complete reviews. They kind of just stay as is, but once it hits that date, it's going to go ahead and roll over to the next one. Now, of course, if we need to, we could always adjust this too. So for example, here, if we need to meet with Andy in a month rather than waiting for whatever time period that we have set up for him, then we can go ahead and edit that first review date and make the changes just like we did before. All right. So another side of client reviews is patching up the cracks, because it's kind of inevitable that you're going to have instances where clients are just going to fall through the cracks, whether they're not replying back to you when you're reaching out to schedule, or, just whatever reason, right? Maybe they rescheduled their appointment and they never came in, or it got canceled and never rescheduled again. There's going to be instances where, again, clients are going to fall through the cracks. So let me show you how we can actually patch up those cracks with, again, my favorite report in Redtail, which is the no contact report. So let's slide on over back to Redtail here. And we're going to go again to that reports tab here on the left-hand side. We are going to go ahead and scroll on down to the third option here, which is contact reports, and choose that no contact report again.
Now, Austin, I'm going to sidetrack real fast here because you mentioned the no contact report is one of your favorite reports. And I'm not sure if everyone really realizes what all those stars are on the reports page. So real fast, if you don't mind clicking on reports again, you'll notice up at the top here in the favorites, if you click on any of those stars, so it's solid, that report is going to show up at the top. And this is user specific. So if you star something, it's not going to star it for somebody else. So if you find yourself saying, this is one of my favorite reports, do what Austin did, mark it as a favorite so it's up at the top.
That way you don't have to scroll down to find it, right? It's always going to appear front and center. All right, so I'll choose the no contact report here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to search for, just remember earlier, we searched for prospects who it's been a while since we last contacted them. In this case, we're going to search for clients, and we're going to get real specific. We're going to indicate whether or not we've entered a note in for their contact record about a client review. So again, we choose this filter option here. We go ahead and choose how far in the future we want to look, or excuse me, in the past that we want to look. So in this case, I'm going to choose 365 days because I want to meet with my clients at least once a year. I'll choose contact status equal to active client. We'll go ahead and narrow it down. I'm just going to look at for just my clients. So I just want to find the ones that are assigned to Tucker. And I'm going to search for no notes entered in for client review notes, So let me explain to you what these filters indicate, okay? So we're looking a year in the past. We're looking just at the clients that belong to Tucker and don't have any client review notes entered in within the last year. And then of course I can narrow it down by head of households too. And so we apply these filters, and Redtail is going to give us some information, okay? And that information is going to be who doesn't have a client review note entered in. Now, this could mean one of two things. Either A, we didn't get the client review scheduled, or B, we got the client review scheduled, but we never entered in the notes. And again, we all know on this presentation here that if it's not in Redtail, it didn't happen. So if there's not a note to indicate it, it's almost as if the client review didn't even happen.
Yeah. Now, also on top of that, this is if we are using linked notes or adding a note directly to the contact record. If you don't do that, which is definitely fine, if you just add it to the description field and are actually just completing the activity, you can actually still use this report, but in the filter, instead of no notes, you can change it over to no completed activities. And then I would just say use the activity type of client review. So, because we actually have, was the activity a client review or not? Same thing here. Were they scheduled and was the activity completed? So you can do the same thing, whether you're marking it with notes or with just completed activities or a combination of both. I love that you have that option.
Okay, so Redtail is searching through all of those previously completed activities, looking at each of those contact records, and it's going to find the ones that don't have a client review completed, and it's going to pull back our results. And then once we have these results, what we're going to do next is we're actually going to take the results of this page here, and we're going to apply those back into that same client review process. So whether that's a tag group, like I taught you, or whether that's creating activities to schedule another client review, like Curtis mentioned, we're going to be able to take those contacts and send them to either of those two places.
Awesome. I think this might be just caught up with us changing the filters a few times. Let's go ahead and just refresh this page and rerun it.
Sounds good. Refresh the page here. Let's change my filters around. Actually, I'm going to navigate away and come back to this. So again, reports. It's one of my favorite reports here for no contact. And we'll go ahead and set our filters one more time. 365 days, active clients, Tucker's clients. And we're going to narrow down. I'm going to use notes. So notes for client review notes. Okay. And we'll go ahead and apply those filters.
Yeah, honestly, like the no contact report, in my opinion, like Austin, I can't push it enough how great it is to, it's essentially, who did we miss? Who did we let fall through the cracks? Technically, if you are staying proactive with your activities, like, hey, I'm always looking ahead to schedule them. Mm-hmm. If I have everybody marked with proper status and category, and I'm narrowing it down to those people, I'm never going to have to really worry about this. But this is the, hey, just in case, did somebody happen to miss and fall through my process? It can happen, things happen, but even if you have it set, this is a great place to check and just make sure that everybody got what they needed.
Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and send this to search here. And then again, once we arrive at the search page here, we can go ahead and again, either use my method to add them to a tag group or use Curtis's method to add it to an activity. All right, so that's patching up the cracks. Remember, guys, if it's not in Redtail, it didn't happen. So be sure to enter in those client review notes after you finish or complete that activity. Curtis, I'm going to kind of change the pace here. We're going to talk a little bit about UDFs. I know we covered them in the last section, but I want to kind of show how these can actually be incorporated into our ongoing client management. So I'm going to ask a question to the audience, and I want to know, what are some things that your office does that makes your clients feel special or recognized before, during, or after a client review? So everybody go ahead and open up that chat and let us know, what are some of your strategies you'd like to share with the audience today about something that your office specifically does that just makes a client feel recognized? I'll give you an example here. Here is recognizing their pet's name, right? I have a very adorable golden retriever here. And when people come up and ask me about Daisy, it makes me feel special. It makes me realize that, hey, they actually care enough to learn not only my name and what makes me important, but also something that's also important to me, and that's my dog.
See, that's the difference between me and you, Austin, because if I feel someone who I see maybe once or twice a year is like, hey, how's your horse Cassie? I would look and be like, why do you know that? We're just different people.
Well, we got some instances in here. So Heather says they make sure that they have their favorite drinks and snacks on hands. They always ask about their fur babies. Justin has drinks ready for them to go with their client review and also sends them a thank you card after they finish. Sally sends a formatted summary of the meeting and highlights the important parts of the question. Lindsay, I like that one. Music preference, understanding what kind of music they like.
I was just reading over that one too. And honestly, I've never heard that before. And I'm thinking about it. And most offices are going to have some sort of music probably playing in the background in the waiting room. I honestly would love if I walked into an office and it's like, oh my goodness, like, I love this music. This is great. You don't have to tell them that, hey, we specifically turned on this music for you. It can be like, oh, you mentioned it one time that you like this and we had them playing. I know it sounds a little Big Brother almost, but it's like, use it to your advantage. Yeah. If I walk in and there's a song, a band, or somebody I like it changes your mood. Music changes your mood on a regular basis, and use that to your advantage.
Yeah, I think that's actually going to serve as a really cool example on a UDF that we can make and apply to a contact record. So let's run through it one more time just so we can really bring home how to use user-defined fields in Redtail. So again, I'm going to slide over to my database. And step number one, of course, is going to be creating the user-defined field in the database. And to do that, we're going to hover over to our name. We're going to choose the Manage Your Account section. And we're going to come on down to Manage Database Lists. On our Manage Database List, there's actually two types of user-defined fields. One's for accounts, one's for contacts. We're going to focus in on this contact one here for user-defined fields. And let's go ahead and add in a field here for music preference. The music preference. Okay. Now, if we want to, we can go ahead and enter in any text field here. I think it's probably more appropriate here, Curtis, to do maybe a list of values, right? We only have so many different types of music that we might have on hand to play. And so let's go ahead and add in some of our different values. So help me out in the chat here, guys. What are some different types of music that you would play as kind of background music with your office? I'm thinking probably something like soft rock, maybe.
Heavy metal is definitely an option.
Heavy metal, definitely got to throw that one in there.
We got jazz. Honestly, like country music.
Country, yep, that's a good one.
Now, here's the thing. My parents, for some reason, like hated country music when I was growing up. And they would, like, if they heard country music, I don't know why it bothered them. I like country music. Maybe even put in an option of no country music. So when they come in, if they don't like hearing it or they don't like hearing a certain type of music, you can do the opposite here. You can do it either way. Ooh, yacht rock. I love that station.
Anything but country. Good. How about holiday music or no holiday music, right?
One of our I forget her job title. She used to be a product owner, but she works with the dev team, and she would listen. Tara would listen to Christmas music all year round if she could. She's fine with it. I think it's a little weird, but hey, if they want to hear Christmas music and they walk in and they love it, who cares if it's June?
I don't see any love for music, movie soundtracks and scores.
Soundtracks. Rick's Spotify playlist is just all movie soundtracks. Like,
that's true.
But the goal here is, now keep in mind, like, we're adding in these drop downs. So this is if you decide there's only a certain list, you can always go in and add to it if somebody adds something. But the option is you can put whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and add the user defined field into the database. And then when we're ready to go ahead and apply that to our contact records. So let's go to Al again. And knowing what you know about Al, Curtis, what do you think his favorite type of music would be?
Oh, that's a great question. Probably, I'm going to say jazz.
Jazz?
I would have said bluegrass, but I could see Al being a jazz guy.
I feel like he probably plays the tenor sax and like plays along to his jazz records. I think it's a thing.
Well, we don't have any jazz playlists, so I think I'm going to go with a soft rock here. Yeah.
Did we not add in yacht rock? Because yacht rock is so much better.
Yacht rock. We can go back and change it. That's the cool part about user-defined fields, right? We could always be updating and adjusting it. You know, now that we're actually talking about it, I think this probably works better as a text field, right? Because there's just so many different types of music that we could put. So let's add that user-defined field. And again, this just becomes something that we can do for our clients during the client review process or ongoing client management to make them feel recognized, to make them feel special, similar to how we did with their lemon zest espresso.
And I think that's such a great point, Austin, is, hey, we are being weird and talking about music preference. And this is such a specific example, but keep in mind, this is about your client, how you can continue to keep like a personal relationship with them in little ways that you can mark in your CRM. So again, this is just, if you happen to offer something like coffee or playing certain music, you can actually put that in. And it's building that client relationship even further. They're on that wheel. If we're circling around and around, it gets boring. But how can I make sure that, hey, I know that these people are here to support me, because when I walk in, they start playing yacht rock. Love it.
I love it. I'll have to give yacht rock a listen. I've never experienced yacht rock. I'll have to.
I mean, at that point, you can get crazy and say, okay, hey, we're going to schedule client reviews, but like this week, we're only scheduling people who like country music. And next week, we're going to only schedule people who like yacht rock. Like, you can get specific so you don't have two people one who loves country music and one who doesn't, come into the office at the same time, and then havoc breaks loose.
Yeah, we definitely don't want showdowns happening in the waiting room. All right, let's slide back. Another thing that we can do to kind of recognize and make our clients feel special as far as ongoing client management goes is recognizing their birthdays. And Curtis, you and I, we work with a lot of different offices, and we know that people have different ways of managing birthdays, right? Some of them, they're really particular. They want it day of, right? I want to send that email. I want to make that call on their actual birthday. But for some of us, we got some big offices, lots of clients. It comes a little bit more challenging. So we might use a weekly or a monthly. So participants, go to the chat. Let us know. What do you guys do? Do you do it the day of the birthday? Maybe you just do their birthday week, or you a little bit more bigger picture and break it down month by month.
I like my birthday to be celebrated all month long. So if I'm not getting a call from somebody telling me happy birthday every single day, is it worth it?
Yeah. we were just so you guys know, I think it's the third week of October. That's your birthday week, right, Curtis?
Pretty much. Well,
Yeah,
mine
the whole
and
week.
Catherine's. Remember, our birthdays are just one.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I was
That's
gonna be
right.
like, no, you got to share one day, just
We
one.
celebrate it together. But she normally gets the first half of the week and I get the second half of the week.
Mhm.
Like that's what we've decided.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a good mix here. Susan and Sarah do monthly. Jennifer likes to do a phone call the day of. Jenna sends a card the week before and then a text and email the day of. So again, lots of different ways to go ahead and celebrate birthdays. So let's explore the different options and places we can go inside Redtail to explore those birthdays. So here we go. Let's go here, and I'm actually going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to set today's date as Al's birthday. So I'm going to adjust his birthday here to March. What's today? The 25th? 25th, yes.
Yes. You're just changing people's birthdays.
Well, for examples, we're training this. So it just sets it back 6 months in time. And so if we're reporting on a daily basis, we're going to use our today page, okay? And so we can see because Al's birthday is today, as well as some other members of our client base, it's going to show us on today's birthdays whose birthday it is and how old they're turning.
Okay.
We can also come up here to the reminders. Sorry,
real
go ahead.
fast. Actually, I wanna talk about that section real fast. Let's pick on. I don't want to pick on Al. Click on Sally's birthday. Now, this list, it pulls based off of the birthday, but also based off of the client review reminder. So for some reason, Sally said, hey, I don't celebrate my birthday. Don't call me. Don't tell me anything about it. If you go into contact details and uncheck the birthday reminder, so enable date of birth reminder, now let's go back after we update that. Let's go back to the today page. I just want to show that you can actually take people off that who it's her birthday still, but we're not calling her because she didn't want it. So you still have control over that.
Yeah, not everybody likes to have recognized that they're now another year older. So of course, if you have instances like that, use that checkbox to turn it on and off.
Yeah.
All right, for weekly, so if we do this on a weekly basis, we recommend using the reminder report. And so, oops, sorry about that. Let me slide over here. For weekly reminders, we're going to go to the reports tab here on the left-hand side. We can come on down to the reminders reports. Again, if it's something that we use commonly, we can go ahead and star it. So that way it comes up at the top. And this reminder report allows us to filter for the contacts and how far in advance we want to look. So for example, here, I could set this for 0 days past due. And let's look 7 days in advance. And that's going to show me all of the client birthdays happening in the next 7 days.
And it's a great report because again, you can narrow it down to just like smaller chunks. And even with here, like in the filter, you can say just active clients, or maybe you also call, the dependents of clients or things like that. Maybe you send birthdays for those. You can narrow it down to multiple different contact statuses. And it's really dependent on who do you want to reach out to.
Yeah, if you're working in a shared database too, you can narrow it down just to your clients. You don't have to call, another advisor clients. That might get a little awkward. So now, you can
even
narrow
at
it
this
down
point, Austin, this is also very similar to now that we know whose birthday it is, we can still use those two different forms of how are we reaching out to them.
Yeah.
So you could send them to the search page in the top right, and then either do Austin's way of adding them to a tag group, or you can do my way of adding an activity saying call to wish a happy birthday.
Yeah.
You can definitely do that either way.
Yeah, I also like to use the broadcast email tool in Redtail as well. So if I want to send an individual email here, I can send an email. Or if I want to do 3 of them at a time, I'll select them here and then use contact options, bulk actions, and we're going to broadcast email. And so I might have a nice little birthday template here that I can go ahead and request out, or I can go ahead and just type out my message as I see fit.
And with broadcast email, keep in mind this is sending an email all at the same time for these contacts. So it's not going to say, hey, it's sending the email on their birthday. So if you are doing it a week at a time, I would say start out with, hey, it's your birthday week. Happy birthday. Like you can do that every Monday morning. I'm letting everybody for the week sending a birthday email. Definitely up to you, however you want to do that.
Yeah, Justin asked a good question about the birthday report, and he asked, will they still show up on the report if they have the birthday unchecked? No, they won't. So they won't show up on the reminder report if they have the reminder unselected. So only contacts that have the reminder selected will show up on the birthday reminder report.
Now, I actually like the third way of like doing birthdays by the month.
So that would be using the advanced search tool, right, Curtis?
Yes. And this is very similar, almost identical to how we pulled up anybody who had a client review reminder for the month of April. If we want to see anyone who has a birthday in the month of April, we choose contact as the type, DOB month, so date of birth month, equal to, and then we can say April. And then again, the same concept. I can add them to a tag group. I can add an activity to reach out. From here, though, we got 40. Let's narrow that down to active clients.
Yeah.
Let's narrow it down a little more. The other thing, the birthday report is actually a PDF you can run from the search page, which is right now, all of our contacts are listed in alphabetical order. But when you take all 33 of these people who have a birthday in April, and we go to contact options on the right, and then reports, the very first option is going to say birthday report. And this will download a PDF that is actually going to rearrange them, not alphabetically, but put them in birthday order. I actually, and most commonly, I see people do it this way the most. So it's like, hey, once I give them a call, I cross them off. I know a lot of people who like to handwrite birthday cards. This gives you their primary address, their phone number, and they're in order. So if you're going little by little and just marking them off as you go through, it's a great report to have.
Yeah, definitely. Print it out, maybe put it on your bulletin board or your desk in your office, so that way you have it available. Of course, you can always just log as a CRM and see it there as well. All right, Curtis. Well, that takes us to the end of client management. We'll go ahead and welcome back Catherine and Rick, if you'd like to join us as well. And we're going to go ahead and just wrap things up today with just a little bit of questions from you guys. So from any of the content that we covered today, if you guys have some questions, something you want to go over, we're going to address those live now. I know Rick's been working hard answering hundreds of questions today, but if there, again, are some lingering items that you want to ask about, feel free to go to the QA section and we'll be sure to answer those questions for you now.
And I know you answered a similar question, Austin, but I did see it also come up again in the chat is, will that include the DOB you unchecked? And I'm assuming that's referring to like that birthday report as well. Now, when you run a search, if I run, show me everybody who has a birthday in April, that report is not taking into consideration whether or not that birthday checkbox is checked or not. But when you send all of the selected contacts, let's say we have the 33 contacts and we send them to the birthday report, let's say 3 of those contacts have it unchecked, it means only 30 people are going to get sent to the birthday report. So the report that we send the contacts to will take that check mark into consideration.
Yeah. If you're still feeling skeptical about it, you can also add in that DOB reminder as a criteria in your search. So again, if you need to, for whatever reason, narrow down that DOB reminder here, you can set this to equal to false.
True.
And that will go ahead and exclude those members that might have their birthday reminders turned off.
Well, I would probably say make it true. So
make it true, right? Sorry, I got that backwards there.
Yeah. Well, and especially because I've seen people get worried. It's like, hey, I had a list of 33 people. I sent them to the report, and there's only 29 people on it. What's going on?
Yeah,
you might have forgotten that checkbox is there. Right. Add it into your search criteria, so you know the 29 people I have here are going to go all of them to that report.
Yeah.
So guys, we actually have a kind of different topic here completely. It's from Trey regarding notes and couples.
Real fast, just so everybody knows, as Catherine's answering questions, this part is just general Q&A. Like if you have a question, you can type it into Q&A. So it might feel like we are jumping around a little bit because we are.
It
Sorry,
is just
Catherine, go
true.
ahead.
So yeah, so just question. So anything that again you might not have gotten answered from Rick yet, or if we're just beating him to the punch, or it might just be again something useful for everyone. I feel like I get this question a lot when it comes to notes in couples or again significant others and spouses. Is there really one definitive way? Is there a best practice for it? And like you might be able to guess here, there's not really a definitive, you have to do it this way method with notes. But when it comes to notes, you can choose to automatic or choose to have them as an additional link contacts. I have some offices I've worked with where that is their practice. Every time they add a note to one contact, they add that other spouse as an additional link. On the other side, I also have some offices who add notes to really the applicable person that it affects. Now, the one question I always get with that one is, well, if I'm adding notes to one contact and notes to another, does that mean I have to hop into both contacts to see them? And the answer is no, actually. Because if we go to notes in just a second here, once we go with this one, you can actually show family notes when we're looking at the notes for a whole. So
Yeah.
again, if you have some that are specifically on one or the other, now go ahead and just say this in here so we could see what that looks like for us, Austin.
Yeah, actually, Curtis, or sorry, Catherine.
You're good. We talk a lot.
Austin, Curtis has a beard. Catherine does not.
I
How could I
can create
forget?
one with my hair, but it won't be natural.
So I'm actually going to deselect Jill here. So we're just going to add it just to Tim's record, okay? So we're just adding one note to just Tim's record here. But if I come here and I navigate over to Jill's record and I open up that notes tab here on the left-hand side, we have this option here called show family notes. Because I have this selected, I can see this note here. Even though I just entered in for Tim's record, I didn't tag Jill on there, it still shows up here. Now, of course, if I just want to see the notes that I've specifically entered in for Jill, I deselect, and then we'll notice that that note had disappeared, and that's because it's just for Tim's record, right? So when contacts are linked together in a family, we can use these filters to go ahead and see the entire family or just focus in on an individual person as we wish.
And then that second half of that question, if the spouse dies and the surviving note or surviving person wants to have all those notes, go ahead and click on options for me here. You're going to see you have, at the top there next to add notes options.
Oh, yes.
You can bulk move the notes. So short answer, yes, that is also possible. You get to pick from here what types if you want to get specific, but you definitely can do that if you want.
Now, I do like to point this out as well. The note type is something that you cannot decide what the note type is when creating a note. Note type is something that is added based off of how the note was added. If it's a general note, it'll just be note. If it was a note added because you completed an activity or because you ran a mail merge or because you sent an email, you can actually differentiate based off of those notes. So keep in mind, when you create a note, you don't get to choose, this is an activity note. You do so by going in and linking it to an activity.
Yeah, and they look like this. These are activity notes, right? Here's our email sent notes. So we have any emails that we've sent to Jill. They show up like an email format. And then we also have our mail merge notes here. And again, they come from different places depending on how that note's created.
And then also this note filters. The question came in about like, can you default it? The note filters are saved from contact to contact based off of your browser. What that means is like the cache, the temp files, all those things that remember what you did. If you have something selected here and go into another notes page for a different contact, the same filters will be selected. So if you close your browser at the end of the day and it clears out all the cache, cookies, all the temp files, things like that, then it'll default back to the normal thing. But this is just going to remember what you last had in that session. So unfortunately, there's no set preference default to it. It's just remembering what you last did.
Let's see here. So the next one here is from Kelsey, and I'm already chuckling at it because it says, do you have any tips or tricks to getting people on board with using the new processes? Now, as much as we'd love to say that we can stand behind them and, smack their hand with a ruler and go, nope, that's not it. We can't, obviously. So really coming back to what we said earlier, work in kind of baby steps. If you try to release everything all at the same time, that buy-in can be sometimes a little bit trickier because again, people can feel overwhelmed. Whereas if you start with maybe an easier activity template that everyone will be like, yeah, okay, I'm for that, or an easier note template or an easier workflow, that's when I really feel like people will buy in. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like that's usually the case whenever I come across that.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. I think involving them in making the new process also helps with buy-in. I'll give you this example, and it happens to me quite a bit actually. Is we'll do a one-on-one training with like a database admin or an advisor's assistant, and we'll start working like this beautiful workflow, and they'll be super excited, like, oh my gosh, it's going to change my life, right? And then all of a sudden, I get an email back from them, 2-3 weeks down the line, Austin, the workflow is not working. It's not working. Why isn't it working? It's not the technology's fault, right? It's that we didn't get that advisor or whoever it was that the workflow is depending on to kind of buy into the process. But when you actually hear their opinions, they get to kind of put a stake into investing into building that process. They're more likely to adopt it and go along with it. So I would say when it comes to adopting new processes, involve your team, have brainstorming sessions, ask for their feedback and their opinions, because when they feel like they're invested in it somehow, they're going to be more likely to adopt it.
Right. Curtis, anything to add to that, or should we move on to the next question?
I am typing a different question.
All right, moving on to the next question. So this one's actually a little bit easier, but it's something that can easily be missed. I will be very fair to that. Are you able to change the default activity category? The answer is yes. So if you come up to your name and then preferences right at the top there, let that load for a second, and then actually almost perfectly at the top, you don't really have to scroll too far, you're going to find activity management, where you can change the default category as well as the default type. So again, if you feel like you pick the same things on loop, automatically pre-fill that. I changed mine almost immediately because everything's training. So I can definitely relate to that, and it's an easy fix.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Let's come on up. Let's see here. I'm just double checking to make sure we didn't miss anything in the chat too, because I know sometimes those get missed as well. Okay, okay, we did that one.
One question did come in saying if we had email addresses we can send if you have questions. Keep in mind the best way to reach us is you can always email support@redtailtechnology.com or also training@redtailtechnology.com. Keep in mind, like, emailing training is normally if you want to like schedule a meeting, things like that. But if you have a quick question or if you want to know where something is, the best way, the fastest way to get a response is normally just emailing support@redtailtechnology.com. There's quite a few more of them that respond to those emails to make sure that our customers get answered to a little bit fast. But again, if you want a little more extra, like an actual meeting, things like that, feel free and email training@redtailtechnology.com.
Yeah, I kind of let offices know about this, is because we spend all of our days having different meetings with different offices. So we don't really have a lot of time in our day to kind of go and answer emails and provide feedback there. But support does. Support is that's their sole purpose and job. That's why they exist, to help you with those emails. So I would ditto what Curtis says and definitely go to support. And then of course, if it's something complex, they could always ask us the question, or they can refer you over to us and we can get something set up.
And if you want to talk to us one specifically, all three of us are on that training email. Mm-hmm. So you can address it to us directly as well. Say, hey, Curtis, and it comes to us, so that way we can actually respond. If you say, hey, I don't want to talk to Curtis, you can say, hey, I want to talk to anybody but Curtis. That's definitely fine too.
You could even add, Redtail as a contact, and then put in the user defined fields, your favorite trainer and the ones that you don't want to talk to.
Right.
I mean, that's genuinely happened to me. Like, Curtis knows this because he took the client who didn't want to work with me anymore. Like, you remember that? You remember that?
I absolutely do, Rick. It's mainly sometimes you're a little too intense, and that's okay.
I believe you told me you will clean up my mess.
Yeah, hey, that's what I'm here for.
And you know what? It happens. Yep. It happens. Like, we try our best to work with people, but people don't always gel together with our personal brand of nonsense or our teaching styles. And that's fine. If you've worked with somebody in the past and you want to work with somebody different, there's nothing wrong with that. We want to help you out no matter what.
One question came in saying, does Redtail use their own CRM? And I can say yes. Like the training team, we're probably, because we interact with customers directly more in a customer way, we use it more so than anybody else, but like all of our scheduling, everything, our notes, everything that we do is in the Redtail CRM. Like we put that there, and really what we're actually showing and what we're doing is because we do it too.
Yeah, when we get training requests, I go and add that as an activity on my calendar. After I finish it, I put in a link note with what we trained on. So that way, if we do another one, we can follow up. So the same kind of client experience you provide to your clients, we do the same with us to kind of help remember, because we serve lots of different clients as well.
And that in turn, like it allows for Ricky, he is our leader. He is managing us somehow. I'm going to let you know that the training team is probably the most diva of all the teams in Redtail. And Ricky manages us, and he goes through and he runs those activity reports to say, okay, how many activities and things, how many trainings are happening, what meetings are happening. We use the Redtail CRM just like how we teach you guys to.
Yeah. I really like all of that contact reporting, all of that activity reporting, things like that. We do that. We have a specific activity type for training. We have a number of categories for training. So we do use all that. Somebody brought up the hungry thing, and I promised the people who stuck around that they would get a sneak peek at this. So this is Richard the Hungry. Oh, right there.
Is he a pirate?
He's got the pirate hat.
I'm confused. Are pirates and Renaissance the same thing?
Kind of.
I was thinking he kind of looked like we're about to be invaded circa 1776 and about to hop on a horse and tell us the British are coming. The shoes make a difference.
It's true. The shoes make a difference. The shoes are more or less pirate shoes and more like, Renaissance shoes. And then there's the spoons and whatnot around the belt. So
I don't know, Rick. I feel like I've seen that guy when I was in line for Pirates of the Caribbean.
I have.
Actually, if you take that character out of that, they look like elves. Fun fact.
I know from personal. I did the Scottish accent. I did everything.
Wait, so you were a Scottish pirate at a Renaissance fair?
I mean, what else would you expect?
And you were hungry. You were a hungry
Pirates of the Caribbean really blew up
Renaissance fair.
Well, I will say we have no more questions here, so we'll give it like one more minute just for anyone who may be typing out a really lengthy question. I don't want to cut you off, but we'll give about one more minute and then we'll wrap it up so you guys can actually enjoy the rest of your Thursday. But I will also take this time and say thank you all for dealing with our absolute crazy nonsense that we definitely do. I know time is always the one thing we never have enough of, so thanks for hopping on with us. But I know I did see, I think it has a little bit more questions here, or one more. So when you run the important information list workflow, does it have you enter the information real time? So if you're talking about like in the workflow, does it prompt you to go to that person's and fill it? The answer is no. But I do recommend having that in its own tab, and then also having that contact open, updating the contact information, going back to the workflow Excel, clicking complete for that task, and then literally working your way down from there. So hopefully that's kind of what you mean, but updating and completing it does enter in real time.
One last question that came in before we wrap up, and then I'll let you guys close, is for the survey. We will be sending out a follow-up email that is going to have links to the slide deck, and it's going to have links to our survey for you to fill out. Give us all the feedback that you can, and we will be picking 3 random people from that survey to send a Redtail gift box to. So we don't have the link now, I don't think, but you will be getting that in the post follow-up survey.
Can I be a winner?
No.
Oh. No. What if me, Catherine, and Austin all fill out and then we end up winning?
I just wouldn't pick your names.
Rick would one be like, huh, that's crazy. And then the second time it had to be like, okay, I'm done. I already know how this could happen.
But let me assure our users that Austin, even though I'm not trying to call us dumb by any means, but Austin, myself, and Catherine do not have the smarts in order to rig a survey. We don't know how to do that.
Okay.
We're smart enough to teach CRM, but not smart enough to actually trick anything.
Yep. All right. I'd say go ahead. Actually, I think, Austin, are you still sharing your screen? That was in English very well, but are you still sharing? Or who's sharing?
Yeah,
Whoever's sharing.
I got the
Go on
screen.
back to the PowerPoint. We'll wrap it up with the whole thank you. I think there might be one more question, so we'll knock that out and then we will wrap it up from there and log off for the day. So let's see. So in my workflow template, customer service. Got it. Okay. So Lisa's asking about the categories for workflow. So that does require you to be an admin. So make sure when you actually are looking at your list that if you go to your name, manage your account, you can actually see the managed database list. Anything that's added for that section will then instantly be available for you to choose for the workflow itself. But if you don't see that managed database list, that means you're not an admin, which isn't a bad thing. That means you get to have someone else take the responsibility of adding it.
And then the workflow categories are the same as the note activity categories. It's the same
Exactly.
list.
Mhm.
That's what we'll put a pin in it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again, everyone. With
Bye,
that,
everyone.
we're going to close off. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Vaya con Dios. I guess I have to end it. I am
Yep.
after all. Bye, everyone. Have a good